Hi, everybody, live from San Francisco. It's another show, another TFE Live. This is our show number 243 for the 3rd of December, 2019. Julia, it is the last month of the last year of the decade.
My goodness.
Is that right? Do I have that right?
It depends on who's counting.
Well, it depends if you count zero as the end of the decade or as the first of
That's
the
correct.
new decade. And let's, for the purpose, our purposes, let's say this is the last month of the last year of the decade. We're about to go into 2020. Lots going on in 2020 and 2021. Welcome, everybody. I'm your host, Tom Ehman. Julia, of course, our coordinating producer at this point, always likes to say...
Please like, share, and subscribe. It helps everybody.
Indeed, and if you're so inclined... go over to sailingillustrated.com and become a patron. This is, after all, Giving Tuesday, isn't it, Julie? Julia? They called you Julia as a kid, right?
I was Julie until I was 39.
Why 39?
Because I decided to grow up when I was 40.
And became Julia. Is that more formal?
Oh, when I was dealing with corporate execs, I couldn't say, "Hi, this is Julie calling." This is Julia. You know.
Welcome, everybody. We got a great show for you. Standing by live in Auckland is Marcus Spillane, who's the president of the 49er, and the NACRA 17 class will be with him. He's going to update us on that terrific event going on down there. In the meantime, we hope that all of you had a very nice Thanksgiving. In fact, it used to be a day or a 4-day weekend, and now it's a week, including then Black Friday, the big shopping day here, at least in the States, and increasingly one hears around the world. Then Small Biz Saturday, where you're supposed to go buy from, I guess, small businesses. Then Cyber Monday, where the big online, and Julia, hasn't that overtaken now? Cyber Monday has overtaken Black Friday as a shopping day, right?
Yes.
Online sales.
If you think that Black Friday is one day.
What you had some number like 7 billion, or was it 13 billion?
11 they're thinking now.
On yesterday, on Cyber Monday.
Yeah.
Wow. Unbelievable. And then, of course, today is Giving Tuesday, which is a good day if you're so inclined to give to your favorite charity or your favorite media outlet.
Yes.
Okay, I had to get that plug in.
Well, you had to do that.
Had to get that in. Marcus Spillane, as we said, is the president of the 49er and the NACRA 17 class. He's the boyish-looking gentleman. He is standing by. Irish originally, born and raised in Ireland, lives now in New York City. Also a senior serious official in world sailing. He is joining us in a moment live from Auckland. But first, let's give you an update on the goings-on at the Royal Ocean Racing Club, where we told you a week ago Friday and then brought you live last Tuesday. They're meeting at the Rourke, at their beautiful clubhouse in London, St. James Place. James's, some people have corrected me, in London, where they announced that the finish of the 2021 and 2023 Fastnet races would not be in Plymouth, but would be in Cherbourg, France. So they'd still go out around the Rock and the famous lighthouse, but instead of returning to Plymouth, they would go to Cherbourg for not next year, but because it's every other year, for the 2021 race, and also again in 2023. What we can tell you is that the AGM of the RORC took place Monday night, last night, in London. We have heard some reports, but I haven't been able to confirm it, and until I can confirm it, I'm not going to report what one hears, because we like to do that with 100%, or nearly as possible, 100% reliability. But I can confirm that there is a senior series club in the UK which is saying that if the race that is run by Rourke continues to be run, as now they have said, if they continue now to go forward with running the finish in Cherbourg, this club in the UK is going to run their own race, and guess what? In even years, and finish in Plymouth. So we'll see how that all plays out. The guy who made the decision, and a senior serious, as we like to say, official, our longtime friend, Eddie Warden Owen, he's the one who has been leading this charge, or so one here, so we're all told. And he is the CEO of the RORC, so we'll see how that plays out. In the meantime, we should welcome everybody who is here for this big show with Marcus Spillane. We're really delighted to have him on. And a lot of folks on here, including Stingray and Blake Middleton. John Schaefer is in Annapolis. Marina Sikuju, I guess, is she's in Europe somewhere. I think in Athens. I'm not quite sure. John Emmett is watching from rainy Melbourne. So across the Tasman from where our guest is standing by, Marcus Spillane, as we mentioned. Paul Mello. Hello, Paul. Daniel Grun. Hello to you, sir. Roger Lockhart, thank you for your comments this morning. Blake Middleton said he's just boarded my flight from LAX, back to MSP, Minneapolis, St. Paul, up in Scout Country, where they've got some snow. They had quite some weather here in the upper Midwest and the eastern part of the country. Clark Chapin from Earthquake in wildfire-free Michigan. Yeah, but you have tornadoes, Clark.
And a foot of snow.
And, well, he's got some snow. Jean-Pierre Keekins up in Montreal. Marcus Fentner, good evening from Athens, our German friend who's president of the IKA and whom Marcus Spillane will know well, although they spell their first names differently. Marcus Fentner with a K. Harold Bennett is joined. Now, Harold, we're going to talk about him. I have a photo of him in the show, an image, because he is, I believe, Marcus, the PRO for your regatta down there. We'll confirm that with Marcus in a moment. Dan Jaspers, Dwayne Collicott. Dan Jaspers saying good day to all of you from Lower Saxony in Germany. Long time no see. Gordon Smith up in the Scandahuvia. Blake Middleton, the aircraft door just closed. Oh, well, cheers, Holly. Guess he doesn't have an internet connection. John Emmett, I still haven't decided to grow up. For now, I will remain John rather than Jonathan. Julia.
Well,
Julia.
I respond to either one. Yeah.
Well, I grew up as Tommy.
Yeah.
And because my dad, Tom Sr., so everybody knew me as Tommy. Alex Kent, I really enjoyed the yacht racing movie Maiden about the first all-women's Whitbread around the world race. Yes, and if you haven't seen it, there's Alex down in the comments has put a link to an NPR story. We have had Tracy through here, and she was here at St. Francis not too long ago, and the whole thing is very well done, celebrating their Whitbread all-women's team around the world team from 30 years ago this year. And if you haven't seen it, by all means, go look at it. It's great stuff. William Parker is in cold gray Cincinnati. Warren Schasser is in Brisbane. So down your way again, Marcus, and Tom O'Keefe, Bill Canfield, Gordon Smith, Paul Homchick. Wow, a lot of folks on here. Josh Tozo presumably out in the World U.S. Sailing headquarters in Bristol, Rhode Island. Ross Nolan, hi from Ireland. Great 49er result today. Yeah, there's some good Irish. Jody Shields, we have a picture of you in the show, too, because I know you're down there at the Royal Akarana Yacht Club helping with commentary for this event. We're going to ask Marcus to explain how that's all going. Ben Remacher, who, of course, is the class manager for the classes for which Marcus Spillane is president. He's saying Ben is morning all 49er FX, NACRA 17, heading onto the water as we speak for the day 2 of their combined World Championships. And indeed, Marina Sikuju is in Athens. And Jody Shields, of course, as we said, is in NZ. Chris Bretschker, Vince McAteer, Aaron McIntosh is on. There is one of New Zealand's finest sailors, great guy and longtime friend. Okay. Let's get going here with this segment from New Zealand. They're conducting their World Championship, combined World Championship of the 49er, which of course is the men's skiff in the Olympics, the double-hander, the 49er FX, which is the women's skiff, double-hander, and the NACRA 17. And joining us live from Auckland is, of course, the president of those three classes, the boyish Irishman, Marcus Spillane. Welcome, Marcus.
Hey, Tom. Hey, Julia. How are you guys?
Good, thank you.
Good.
How's the event shaping up? It's day 2. You had yesterday a lot of wind, and only the 49er men went out, if I got that right. Tell us how it's all shaping up.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, look, this is the first World Championship we've had in New Zealand since the start of the 49ers. And if you think about that, with the strength of sailing here, it was long overdue that we came down here. And of course, the great thing is being able to do it with both the 49er FX and the NACRA 17, just as a combined world championship. It's quite often big by M&As to kind of have these bigger championships, so they're not spreading themselves so thin, sending people around to different classes all over the world. And so, we're delighted to be here. We have a phenomenal organizing authority.
We'll see how good his Wi-Fi is, though, because he is on a Wi-Fi, and there's a lot of people down there, the whole television thing, and it looks, Marcus, like we may have lost you. That's not a good sign. Let's see what we've got here.
Tell everybody else to hang up.
Yeah, tell everybody else down there to hang up, all these people that are watching. Because we here have got we got a gigabit Ethernet connection, and our computers are all hardwired. So, Marcus, give us a call back. We have lost you. In the meantime, I'll carry on with some of the slides that we have of this event. Good thing. Here's an opening video. Have a look at this video. It was shot a few months ago, but it was a promo for this regatta, and a cool video at that.
Bloody windy out today. Oh yeah, you'd definitely hit the left today, wouldn't you? 30s, 35s, what more could you want? Beautiful. Hi, my name's Michael Wilkinson. We're really looking forward to having you down there in the greatest country in the world, New Zealand, for the 49er FX and NACRA 17 World Championship here at the beautiful, stunning new Royal Acarana Yacht Club. We've got the city over here. We've got race areas out here. It's going to be an absolute pearler. If you go on the 49er and NACRA Facebook pages and the website, you'll find all you need to know about the regatta and the conditions you might expect out here, which I can tell you, bloody wild today. We may be coming into winter now, but come summertime, these waters turn into some of the greatest sailing conditions in the world. So we'll see you here in December at the Royal Acarana Yacht Club for the World Champs. It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be awesome, and it is, by all accounts, from what we've seen so far, that a lot of breeze yesterday. Apparently, it has laid down a bit today, and congratulations to all of them involved. I hope they haven't had some other kind of a disaster down there, because we've definitely lost Marcus and the internet connection. It's the first, and Julie, as you know, we did a long technical check with Marcus yesterday.
And he was fine today.
And he was fine earlier today when we continued. But Marcus, I'm hoping will call us back, and we will carry on with the interview with him as he is there at this club. This is the Royal Acarana, brand new. They just rebuilt the club in the clubhouse, and a fantastic scene. There he's coming back, hopefully. And we'll see. We've got.
Can you hear me, Tom?
We can hear you. And can you hear?
Sorry, I'm not.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
I was able to hear you, and then all of a sudden I went and maybe it's because I had the Skype open on my other computer. Maybe there was some issue there, but apologies for that.
Well, welcome back. We were just showing this slide, which is the club where you are located.
That's right.
Tell us about the Royal Acarana as your host.
So, again, they have some great volunteers here, as I was saying. They've been great people to work with. The club was recently, it's brand new. There's still some construction in the back side, actually, which is, kind of roped off and everything. But the front side, as you can see, the pictures, everything is here that you'd expect from a world-class yacht club. And it's really, a great team to work with. Harold Bennett, John Parrish, guys that you will recognize as part of our race team. David Campbell-James, who we bring with us all of the time to kind of run our race courses. Alan Baser is the head of the jury. We just have a world-class team here, a world-class facility, some brilliant water. I know you've been down here, Tom, and I'm not sure how much in the background you can see, but the 49er FXs are heading out. Another beautiful day. And yeah, we're excited to be here, and it's shaping up to be obviously a great championship, but a lot on the line for some teams who are trying to qualify their country for Tokyo 2020.
Well, before we forget, give a plug in here for your sponsors, because you've got an extensive group, especially related to this TV effort.
Yeah, and that's been a really big thing. As you know, we've been pushing the media side a lot in our classes over the last number of years, trying to bring the action to our fans and trying to learn at the same time. We have to get better with commentary. We have to get better with how we kind of tell the story of our sport. But delighted to have Sky Sports New Zealand here as one of our primary sponsors. They're filming all 6 days live on one of the courses. Then Sideline app, and I'm sure we'll talk about that again in a minute, where they've come on and they've said, hey, we'll fund the cost to film 2 of the other courses. So we have 4 in total. So that means 3 of our 4 courses are being broadcast live all 6 days. And then obviously New Zealand.com, the tourist authority, Bailey's, which is a real estate company, Magic Marine, which is a class sponsor. I mean, there are loads of people here involved in this, and very, very exciting for us to kind of put on an event of this size, this complexity, and with a budget of the size that it is, north of $750,000 to put this on in its entirety.
Mm. Well, speaking of television, I know you've got a big operation. In fact, there's a shot over my shoulder now. There's a shot of your, I guess, the control room or the virtual control room there at the yacht club. Is that's at the yacht club, is it?
That's at the yacht club, and that's just Sideline App's control room. We have 2 broadcast trucks out the back, which belong to Sky New Zealand, and that is, when you walk out there, it's even more crazy than what you see there in terms of the amount of wires that are being led all over the club. And everything, and it actually really brings home, Tom, just the challenges that we have with our sport in terms of how complicated it is to kind of show when you have a field of play that is literally tens of square miles versus soccer or American football, where you have a fixed field of play that's 100 meters by 50 meters, and that's a real challenge. And of course, back in the day, if you remember the America's Cup with the helicopters and things like that, so some of the big budget events can really push the boat out, but for most events, it's really challenging. And I think the advent of drones, stabilized cameras, 4G, 5G technology in terms of bonding and getting stuff off the water, that's all helped. But we're still at the early stages of really showcasing our sport in this kind of media friendly way.
Tell us a little bit about your background before we go back to the TV, because of course everyone is keenly interested in this, aware of the challenges we have. I've been involved in the America's Cup since 1980, and we saw in 83 when they went live from the helicopter in that 7th and final race, and since then a lot has happened. And I've been watching all morning the Star Sailors League, and Marcus, I don't know if you've seen any of that, but that gang are doing a fabulous job with that event. Yep. And the TV, and full marks to you all for what you're doing down there. I see our friend, see that, who that Julie in the middle? You see who that is?
I don't recognize him.
That's Jody Shields.
Oh, that's Jody.
He's got, Jody's over there. He's been on the show and is a FOSI, or what we call a friend of Sailing Illustrated. But full marks to all of you involved. What is your background? And then let's go back to the TV.
I mean, I'm a sailor. I grew up sailing. I'm from Crosshaven in County Cork in Ireland. So a member of the oldest yacht club in the world, Royal Cork, which is coming up on its 300th anniversary next year. So they're planning a lot around that. But basically, it's a bit like when kids go to camp. I was basically sent to the yacht club to do the sailing courses while I was on school holidays. And that's where, living right by the sea, my love of the sea came about. And I've been very, very fortunate. Everything I've achieved in life has come through people I've met sailing or just the experiences that I've had. And I'm very grateful for that. And so, grew up sailing kind of dinghies in Ireland, Laser 2s initially, became the chairman of that class, which is how I ended up, I think, starting to get into the administration side of sailing. And ran that for a while. And then, when I went to university, I did actually a bit of team racing, and then really got a few breaks sailing with the Wilmots, actually Jamie Wilmot on a Swan out of New York when I lived there for the first time back in 2000, 2001 and 2002. And basically since then, I've done a lot of offshore racing. I've sailed the 49er. I actually did my first European Championships in 1999, so ahead of the 2000 Olympics. And I've been involved in the class ever since. And unfortunately, I haven't sailed in the last few years. The last time I sailed the 49er was in 2014, I believe. But, got more involved on the administration side. And, I kind of work for myself. I have a couple of things that I have going on in New York. But the great thing is I have a little bit of flexibility, which allows me give the kind of time that these classes deserve, and why I'm kind of involved in it. And I'm genuinely, as I'm sure you're aware, passionate about the sport. I think there's so much opportunity. There's so much more we can do. But I think, I just love it. And as I say, being involved in Olympic level sport, hanging out with the likes of Peter Burling, Blair Tuke, Alex Maloney, Molly Meach, these are world-class Olympic medalists. And, for somebody that was never, I sailed internationally, I sailed the 49er, but never, was good enough or dedicated myself enough to going full time on it, just to be around these people and kind of giving them the environment for them to achieve what their goals are is something I feel very, very strongly about.
Now you said you're in New York and you lived there for a while and then went back, I guess, to Ireland, and now you're back in New York again, basically full time, aren't you? May I ask what you're doing there?
Sure. So I'm at the moment I'm the head of strategy and business development for a blockchain startup called FIC Network. We're building a platform for bonds on the blockchain. That's one of the things, and that's my main kind of role at the moment.
There you go again.
Come back. I hear it trying to reconnect. There must be a serious internet problem there at the club, because there's all the sailors. I don't know what's going on, but I think when he said they're building a blockchain for, sounded like bombs, but I'm sure he meant bonds, BONDS, don't you think? So hence in New York City, and what that is about, we have, I think, lost Marcus again, so I'm going to go back to the slides. Good thing I have slides, which he and some of his colleagues sent, and I dug up off the internet. But this is this television production, and it's a combination of Sky TV New Zealand, not to be confused with Sky TV in the UK, because they're separate companies. But it's the first time that any company, as far as we're aware, has agreed to do live the World Championships of Olympic classes, the World Champion obviously combined for these three classes, from soup to nuts, from start to finish. Plus, they have this new company, which is Kiwi-based, called, what is it called? It's the something app. It's called Sideline App, and it's not really an app. It's a website, sidelineapp.com, and it's quite interesting. And they are helping to televise by live streaming. So they have it not only over the air on Sky TV New Zealand, but they also are putting it to the internet on this Sideline app. And this organization covers, it's a new company that covers various sports. And I think we've got Marcus back now, but they do cover various sports in New Zealand, not just sailing. So it's good to have them contributing to this effort. And Marcus, if you can hear me, we're back now just talking specifically about the not only Sky Sport, but about Sideline Apps coverage. And you want to plug that?
Yeah, sure. And I mean, look, Tom, we thought long and hard, and apologies for the connection. It doesn't seem to be an internet speed thing. It just drops the Skype call every few seconds. But I think just jumping to Sideline App, I think we thought long and hard before we went behind a paywall. I don't like doing it. I'll say that for now. I do not believe that's the way forward. I don't think it's a way to generate revenues. I think the challenge we had was when Sky came in to do the live course, Sideline App, because they have some relationships here in the club, said, look, they would take on the cost of producing the other two courses and transmitting it across the world. The challenge, of course, was that they wanted to, have us pay for it. And the reality was we just don't have the budget. They're spending in the region of 200,000.
Well, we've lost him again. They've obviously got an internet connection problem there at the club, and there are a lot of competitors, and they've got the broadcast, and I don't know what all is going on. So, and it's clearly more of a problem today. We'll try to give them one more shot, but needless to say, this is a cool and huge undertaking, and trying to do one of the big challenges in doing sailing, as we know from doing the Governor's Cup, Chris Bretschker is watching, is that we have to get out on the water and try to do it through what's called bonded cellular technology, meaning you're taking 3 or even 4 different cell circuits or signals, bonding them together to have enough bandwidth to send up through the cell system and then to Facebook or to YouTube or wherever you're streaming it. And it's not easy, and frankly, it's not all that it's not inexpensive. We've got Marcus back. Do you want to talk about budgets beyond I don't know the numbers. We've talked privately, and I don't want to expose anything, but you said just a moment ago, Marcus, you're probably not going to recover from being behind a paywall for the streaming coverage that you're doing anywhere near what you're spending. So what was the thinking in all that?
I think, look, there was, based on their experience with some sports, local sports here in New Zealand, there was a feeling that they may be able to generate enough signups to not cover the cost, but what they wanted was a contribution. And so they're in effect sponsoring the differential. But I just feel it's a small company. They don't have the resources to do the complete, a full amount of a cost that production of this scale requires. And so, from our perspective, we are showing the first race every day live on Facebook. That's going, free. And then what we're basically saying is if you're interested, or if you're following a certain team, or you have fans or kids sailing, then, we're looking for people to sign up. And it's an experiment, Tom. As I say, I don't like it from the perspective I want as many people seeing our sport as is possible. And here, Sky Sports New Zealand, it's free to air in New Zealand. But of course, them transmitting abroad, we tried to get some other broadcasters to pick up the feed. That didn't really prove as successful as we were hoping. And it's just, there's a lot of moving parts. And as I say, these are experiments. We're trying to do the best we can. We're trying to figure out the business model that makes it work. And I do look at the Star Sailors League, for example, as you mentioned earlier. They do a phenomenal job, but they do have a great benefactor that helps get the thing going. And on the back of that, then they can go out and become more commercial. And I think, we had, as you probably know, we had Seiko Watch Corporation was a sponsor of the class for 8 years back in kind of 2006 to 2014 timeframe. And that's actually what allowed us start this attempt with the kind of the live broadcast. And since then, we've, tried to build on that, tried to cut costs where we can, but it's just, we don't yet have that business model that works. Well, and we don't have
Yeah, full marks to you. And I know how difficult this is, live television, because we're the only live TV show, as far as we're aware of, in the sport. In fact, you go outside the sport and live, other than on network or cable TV, it is difficult. It's Brave New World stuff. Full marks to you. So you've just given us some news, though, I think, Marcus. You're saying that the first race each day is free to air. That's new news from what you told me and what because Ben Renmacher, your class manager, announced this whole production on when he appeared on our show live via Skype, Julia, a couple months ago, I guess. So you're saying the first race is live, free to air,
yep.
And then after that, they can go to 49er.org/live or NACRA17.org/live and get access for now. What is it, $14.95 for the balance of the day's racing?
$14.95 for the balance of the day's racing, and that's then for the rest of the event. I mean, it's not per day. That's just the package for all the racing.
That's all the racing, and racing continues through
Sunday.
Through Sunday. Okay. Well, again, we're delighted that people are trying this. As you probably know, Russell Coutts has had trouble selling to the America's Cup, when he was running the America's Cup for Larry and for us, Golden Gate Yacht Club. And he has some numbers for Sail GP, which frankly are, I'm not sure if they're a bit embellished, but television is a niche sport and it's tough to do it. And until we try the things like Star Sailors League is doing a fantastic job in Nassau, what World Sailing is trying to do with their monthly show, what we're doing, the Governor's Cup, the youth match racing events at Cruising Yacht Club and also at the Royal Prince Alfred, and Congressional Cup in Long Beach and a few others. It's nice to see it happening. Congratulations to you on the effort. And it'll be, will you or Ben come back on down the road and tell us how this all worked out and what the learnings were?
Sure, I'm very happy to do it. I mean, just to kind of give you an idea, one of the things that we're hoping for in this regatta is if we get, an indication that the signups, for example, are actually worth something, then Sideline App have said, look, they're prepared to roll the dice again when we do our Worlds in Geelong in February. And so you can see it's as I say, we don't have all the answers yet. It's still very much experimenting. It's trying to figure out how we cover the cost of these productions, and they are not insignificant, as you know.
No,
and
exactly.
I think that's the challenge.
So you said your Worlds are in February in Geelong. For those of us who are geographically challenged, that's essentially Melbourne, Australia, and that
Correct.
is leading up to the Olympics, which of course are in Japan in August in Enoshima, not in Tokyo, but the Sailing Olympics in Enoshima. And even that makes our sport challenging to cover because the so-called the Olympic Broadcast Service at the International Broadcast Center will be in Tokyo, not in Enoshima, so that has to be remotely covered and so on and so
Are
forth.
they planning to do that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they will. They have since, Gary helped pioneer that with ESPN and NBC then, and, NBC and some other ESPN cover, Gary Jobson. Let's switch from TV and talk about the great staff you have there. This guy is a longtime friend of mine. In fact, you can ask him. I won't repeat the story. Julia knows about it because I have a picture out here on the wall at the Beach Street Yacht Club when Harold said to me famously during the 2010 America's Cup, I was the race committee boat representative, and he said, I won't go through the whole details. The race committee, which was the Swiss race committee, had gone on strike, and he didn't have enough hands to run the race. And I said, well, Harold, I can go back and take the postponement flag down. So Harold Bennett, who's one of the greatest race officers in the modern history of the world, is apparently your PRO. Is that right?
He sure is. Yeah. In fact, I was only speaking to him this morning. I can honestly say we had a really challenging day yesterday. And I think the easy thing would have been to send everybody home. And Harold was spot on. He said, this is going to clear. We will get out. And the fact that we got 2 races in for each of the 49er fleets yesterday afternoon was, it was his call. And his team here, they're world-class guys. And I think it showed. And our sailors recognize that. And, as you know as well, Tom, we have, the guys that are on the America's Cup circuit or the guys that are on the Sail GP circuit, they're here. And so they know what good race officials are like, and they know what the challenges are. And I think, it's I wouldn't say rare, but most times you'll hear about it when they complain. You rarely hear people come up and say, "Hey, great job." I mean, you do, but it's never. You have an incentive to complain. And
that's sad. If I can just interject, we need to. I sail on a 50-footer down in regularly these days, and it does win, lose, or draw. When we cross the finish line, this is coastal racing or inshore racing here in California. I, as the strategist, back end of the boat, I get on the race on the horn on the VHF and always say, race committee, it's okay. Thank you very much indeed for a great job. And as I say, win, lose, or draw, and whether it's an offshore race or a kids event or anything in the America's Cup, anything in between, we have to encourage our people to show that level. I think you would agree, that level of support, because one of the things what we're finding out is, as I'm sure you know, and here's Harold Bennett, who's older than I. He's a senior citizen, but he's still out there every day racing, and when he's not racing, running races. He's doing both. And as the population, at least in the Western world, you know the bulge. You know what's happening with our kind of your generation and my generation. Is the population is aging. Therefore, the volunteer race officers and paid race officers are aging, and there's not a lot coming around behind and underneath behind. And we're hearing in this country clubs starting to really feel the pressure of not having enough volunteer race officers. So at our little club in Michigan, we make the effort of everyone who races takes a turn in the barrel as a race officer. In fact, several times a year perhaps. And when a particular class is running their class regionals or whatever the weekend regatta is, then people from the other classes will run their events and vice versa. How do we, Marcus, as a class leader and as a senior series person in world sailing, how do we get that message through to competitors and to clubs and classes?
And Tom, you've hit on exactly one of the real challenges of our sport. And, there's a couple of pillars behind what you've just said. If you think about this is, when I started sailing the 49er, it was what I would call semi-professional. Top teams were pretty much full-time, but a lot of, people were aspiring and they were holding down jobs. If I look around the boat park here, most of them are full-time sailors now, and they demand the best. And that's why we have Harold Bennett, John Parrish, David Campbell-James, and a few others. And the problem is there's so much on the line, and there's so much money now on the line in terms of Olympic qualification, in terms of careers, in terms of carding, from their federations. It's just now a serious job. And I think that's something we have to be aware of at the top level. But as you rightfully point out, it's really challenging at club level where, you're going out for a weekend race, and yet you still have people who will protest. You still have people who will want everything to be run perfectly. But we have to do it in an environment that is way more supportive, to your point, rather than always criticizing these people, because it's an unpaid, it's a volunteer role for the most part. And if you look at the rules, and I, in my world sailing, with my world sailing hat on, the rules are getting more and more and more complex, and the rule book's getting fatter, and the case book. And, I'm sitting in the jury room here, and I was talking to them this morning, and it is so, there's so much knowledge required. And we have to think about how we make that simpler for what I would call club racing. And I don't mean to kind of belittle that. I'm just saying we need to make it a little bit simpler, and we need to try and convey to people that these are volunteers who are doing their best, and we need to support them.
Well, let's talk. That's a nice segue into your role at World Sailing. Tell us the committees that you're on and what your role is at World Sailing as a volunteer.
Sure. So, yeah, as a volunteer, and so for me, it's as the president of the 49er and NACRA 17 classes, I sit on what's known as the World Sailing Classes Committee, as well as the Olympic Classes Subcommittee. That's with my kind of president hat on. Then additionally, I represent the Irish Sailing Association in Group A, as it's known, which is Group A on council. And so, I do wear two different hats, and they are different. But it does give me some real good insights into everything that's involved, certainly at the high level of our sport, in the sense of I'm here on the ground in the dinghy park for, 2 weeks at this event, and everything that's involved in running these kind of championships, to also seeing the challenges from, the entire governance. And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that, but the entire structure of our sport, which is way bigger than just Olympics. And, I acknowledge that. And I challenge my colleagues, I challenge everybody. We got to do better on the other parts of our sport and not just focus on the Olympics, which has, long been a criticism of the amount of effort that goes in from world sailing. And, they're the kind of roles that I straggle. I did represent the ISA as well as part of the AGM as the M&A this year. Normally it's our CEO, but he wasn't able to make it to Bermuda this year. So I also did that. And, it gives me, I wouldn't say a unique insight, but it certainly gives me a very broad overview of a lot of the challenges within our sport. And, I certainly do what I can to further how we think about things, and maybe some of the challenges as I see them. And I accept that it's just me. This is, there are lots of differing opinions, but I do believe that I get some credibility because, and I know, and I'm friendly with Gerardo Seeliger, and we spoke a lot about it. You think about what he's saying about, getting sailors involved, being in the dinghy park. And I can honestly say from my perspective, that's exactly who I am. I'm in the dinghy park. I'm talking about that.
And that's why I like what you're doing and what Ben is doing. And none of us is perfect. I headed the U.S. delegation for a dozen years and was on the council for almost 8 years, I guess, and was vice chairman of the events committee and yada, yada, yada. And because I grew up in a small club and as a sailor and ran USYRU for 6 years as executive director, you get a feel and you judge and you sail small boats and big boats. And I really like what you're saying and what Gerardo and others are saying, Luca Devoti, that Paul Henderson he still does say, but he says you got to govern from the boat park. And that's why I like events like what you're doing and what you and Ben and Marcus Fentner as well has become a friend. And I sense that what he's doing is the same, because at the end of the day, the sport needs to be is run by the clubs, should be run by the clubs and the classes. That's where the sailors are. And I like to see class reps. I know some people say, oh, you got a conflict of interest serving on the council representing Group A. Sure. Well, okay, you and people like you know when you say, excuse me, I can't vote on this because it's affecting one of the classes of which I'm president. But I'd rather have people who are nobody complained when there were star class officers on the council.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? When the Star Mafia were running IYRU or the Fin, so people, okay, it's a little more commercial now. And when classes are single manufacturer, one designs, we don't need to go into all that. But let's get classes and clubs at the forefront of the sport. Tell us how you're going to do that. And then, by the way, tell me how this governance proposal, which is going to come up again in April, which you supported at the meeting in Bermuda. And, I was, as you know, I live streamed that. We did a watch party because we couldn't tell, except if you had somebody like me commentating in San Francisco. But I know your voice. We've met, but we've really never hung out. But I said, there's Marcus Spillane, because the president says, oh, hey, Marcus, you talk. Well, nobody, it's audio only. So you didn't really know who the hell was talking and who was saying one thing or another. But we heard you speak. And to your everlasting credit, as I told you last time we spoke on the phone, you spoke clearly, succinctly, and strongly about your position, which was why that governance proposal should be passed. And I respect you for that. You said what you mean what you said. Now, what do you think when this comes back up for a vote in April?
So a couple of things I'd address. Look, of course I'm conflicted. I'm the president of 3 of the 10 events, put it that way. But I think, sorry about that. That was a little bit of a battery malfunction on the stabilizer here. Just give me a second. Always never works the way you want it.
John Schaefer saying that blockchain for Irish car bombs, the drink would make millions in New York City. Clark Chapin says, whatever you do, don't jiggle the blue cable. Clark Chapin is saying, these are engineers, technology guys are saying, I don't know, blockchain for bombs might be even more lucrative. So, but carry on. Thank you, Marcus.
Sorry. As I say, I have a stabilizer here, and I'm not quite sure why it just keeps dropping every second. But as it just did again, hang on. Let me do this. I'll just for a little bit, I'll just put it down here, and you'll be able to see me without the backdrop.
Can you turn it 90 degrees now?
Sorry.
So you fill up. There
you go. Okay. I just realized. So apologies for that, and let me get a little closer here.
This is high-tech television. San Francisco.
Exactly.
Actually, the lighting's a lot better now in your face, so that's good. Great.
Well, I've my iPad spitting some light at me as well. But I did want to show you a little bit of the backdrop. But look, I am conflicted. There's no question. I'm the president, as I say, at 3 of the Olympic events, and then I'm sitting on council making decisions about Olympics, etc. I suppose the only thing I would say in my defense is that I have been absolutely transparent. Everybody knows, because I've been doing the presidency thing a lot longer and being involved in the classes a lot longer than I have been on council. And I think I've made it very clear. I've declared that conflict, and I step back and I get that pre-approved before I look at all the submissions, before we go to the event, and I say, okay, I think I should be excluded from this one, because they directly impact me, and my conflict could be seen as something that would be undesirable. And so for the most part, that works well. And, and to be fair to Kim, he says, quite often that if you're not conflicted, you're not interested. And in a way, he's right. I think if you look across the table and I look at everybody there are lots of conflicts. There are lots of people who are involved in our sport, both on a professional and on a voluntary role, but where they do have conflict. And that is going to be the nature of any organization. And I think our only challenge is that we need to make our declarations and our process around those conflicts a little more transparent than they are today. And I think that clears up a lot of that. I don't think anybody begrudges the fact that I am sitting at the table and, speaking my mind, because I think they see the kind of, boat park to council role that I fulfill.
Exactly.
And I think, so I think that's one thing. Then as it relates to the governance, look, I don't need to go back over all of the decisions that have been made over the since 2012, where, kiteboarding was in, then it was out, then we kicked out the fin, then it was back in, then it was back out. I think our structure, our organization, the governance of our organization is not fit for purpose anymore. And as I see it, just holistically from the top down, we, 94% of our M&As, which are the members that make up World Sailing, 94% of them all said we need to review our governance structure. Now,
MNAs being member national authorities, of which there are 140-ish, one vote per country when it comes to electing the officers and making changes to the Constitution bylaws.
Exactly. And so when you see that overwhelming kind of vote to change, then we started a process 2 years ago under the current board that said, okay, we now need to look at this. And there were a number of engagements, emails, surveys, meetings held to come up with a revised proposal. That proposal was tabled this November. And as you know, it was defeated, 66% to 36% or 34%. And, that's, if I look at it and I listen to some of the objections, there are some people, and I can tell you now, there are some people who vote purely in their self-interest. And that is a really, I think, unfortunate position that we are in. But that is the nature of these organizations. Outside of those people, the people I believe that had objections to the structure, it wasn't about necessarily the whole concept of governance change. It was two things as far as I understand it. One was there may not have been enough engagement with people ahead of the conference. And what I mean by that is everybody had the opportunity to feedback. Everybody had the opportunity to provide input into the various differences. So, for example, there was a significant change between May at the mid-year meeting when initially that feedback was given to November. And that satisfied a lot of the concerns that we had back in May. But from my perspective, we need to be more proactive about going to these people. So rather than just saying, hey, tell me what you think, we need to actually go and say, let's go through this. Where do you see objections? What doesn't sit well with you?
Well,
and
I think,
be more...
if I may, I think that's right. I think there was way too much, way too fast from an administration, meaning the executive board and the late great, he's not late great, that's the non-sailing former CEO, that people frankly didn't trust. And suddenly it appeared to a lot of people like they were trying to ram through this governance change because it was going to, and it will concentrate in the hands of those 9 people, plus the CEO, virtually all of the power. That's the objection that people have, me included.
But I think that's a very narrow way to look at it. I think there was absolutely a protest vote against the current board and the current president, which I think is unjustified in terms of the reason for rejecting the governance. People can, have whatever opinions they want about the leadership, or me for that matter. But in terms of voting against a governance proposal that's designed to move things forward, just because they don't like this current executive or this current board, to me is narrow-minded. And I'm as you know, I'm relatively, I have a strong opinion about this. And I look back and I say, okay, then I think back and I look at Maria Clark, who ran the governance commission with Malav Shroff, with Philip Baum, with Jan Dawson. And I think about the quality of those people. Maria Clark has done the governance review for the IAAF, for hockey, and for a bunch of other federations. And she is a world-class expert on governance for sporting organizations. And so, first of all, that's there. And then you look at Malav, for example, who I am very friendly with. And, again, I know people have their opinions about who he is, but he was involved with McKinsey back in the day that did the governance review of the RYA. And if you look at the success of the RYA and how it's structured as one of our leading M&As, I think that just shows the skill set that we had within that group. And then Jan Dawson, who's a non-executive board member, etc.
A non-executive board member of a bunch of companies in New Zealand, very highly senior, serious person, a vice president, and I get it. The RYA you're mentioning a moment ago is the Royal Yachting Association, which is arguably the best and most successful national governing body, as we would say, NGB or MNA within world sailing. But still, they don't. A lot of people do not trust the current board, and they do not want to give that current board, given what's happened with the finances and other things, give them complete control, because that's what this governance proposal does. You're not arguing with me that it doesn't do that. I mean, this modernization is giving all the power, making the subcommittees advisory only, and giving all the power to that board.
Yeah, but you see, I have a completely different perspective on that, Tom, because, I've grown up in the corporate world. I'm a chartered accountant. I worked with Deloitte. I've worked in multiple businesses that I've, bought and sold myself. And I look at the structure of these organizations, and what we really should be doing is empowering a board with the right checks and balances. I'll grant that. But there was the ultimate check and balance in that proposal where it said, if the members by supermajority, just like it takes to get this thing in, wanted to, they could remove the board en bloc. And I think that is the ultimate sanction over this board, any board in the future.
Yeah, okay, but the chances of that happening, Marcus, are about zero.
Just like the chances.
It's the chance of
are
Prince
to get
Andrew
the thing
becoming the next king of England. It's not going to
happen. Fair enough, Tom. But I think the other thing just to be aware of is, look, we went through, this is best practice, and there was a presentation by a gentleman from ASOIF, the Association of Summer Olympic Federations. Right. And he came in and talked just about governance in general as it related to federations. And if you looked or if you listened to that presentation, you realize that most of what was in our proposal actually was what was reflected as best practice.
I understand
by
that. And our National Olympic Committee in the U.S., USO, it used to be called U.S. Olympic Committee. It's now called U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee. Everyone's been pushing the recreational, the formerly what we would call amateur, or what in our sport we might call the Corinthian governing bodies, to become more professional, to become more corporate. And I have seen that happen in one organization after another, where an organization that was representative as well as corporate. I mean, you could take the U.S. government and say, it's we got all these legislators, we got a Senate and a House, and we got 3 branches, and it's highly inefficient, and we should change it all and put the power in a 9-person board of governors to run the country. Excuse me. That isn't going to happen. It isn't going to work. And I fear, and I don't want to, because you and I don't agree, and we're not going to, but this is the argument. Your argument, hey, let's have efficiency, let's have a corporate governance structure, CEO, top down. And in that structure, which has evolved in that direction over the last 3 or 4 years, the organization's almost gone bankrupt. If they weren't able to get the line of credit against monies that it's not even clear they should be using as collateral for this line of credit, but they've almost run the thing under, and have some other problems. I mean, so I am much happier to have the class leadership, people like you, people like Marcus Schwentner, as the council running the whole show, with a board of governors or board of an executive board that's responsible for executing the policy of this bigger council. And if you are going to run for VP, which I hear you are, and you run and you end up on that board, great. I'm all for it. I don't see the conflict of you being a class officer and yada, yada.
Well, If I may address a couple of things. The first thing is just jumping back to the governance. I don't disagree with some of your sentiments. I'm not actually for, I do believe in professionalizing the board, but I don't believe in having no oversight. And I do accept that the structures and the various committees and commissions that fed up into the board, that needs to be looked at. And I have no issue with that.
And maintained, you're saying.
And maintain.
Yep.
But what I'm also trying to point out is what people voted against was they thought it was the end point in and of itself. And what it actually was is, hey, this is the starting point of the next period in our organization's history in terms of under this more efficient process. And we can still change things, and we can still improve and change based on the practicality of when we put it in place and seeing just how things work.
Yeah. Oh.
I think the other thing that we've lost is this other side of our sport where we were going to have a development and participation commission. And I am strongly in favor of that. I can't believe that we spend so much time, notwithstanding that's my kind of role here as the president of the three Olympic events, but we spend so much time talking about Olympics rather than really focusing on the rest of our sport.
Okay.
In terms of finances,
you know what? You've worked for one of the big 3 or 4, and you're a corporate guy. You know as well as I, and Julia, by the way, you don't know Julia, but she is a corporate headhunter by profession, par excellence. She went to Stanford, and she has hired more people into heads of more companies and so on. She will tell you, as I will tell you, what makes the structure of an organization are the people, not the structure. And you hire the right people, you get the right people into the job. So I don't think, and I totally agree with you about the organ, and everyone on here, we got hundreds of people or thousands that'll watch this in replay, will all agree, hey, world sailing is too focused on the bloody Olympics. But somebody has to be, so they are. The reason they are is not because of the structure. You could have structure A, B, or C, X, Y, or Z. That organization is still going to be focused on the Olympics because of the nature of the people who go there.
And the current funding.
And say it again, Joe.
And the current funding.
And because of the, more than half the budget, much more than half the annual budget comes from, now I'm going to get us back to sailing here, comes from the IOC, from the television revenues, which will be flowing in again, thank God, next year. Otherwise, the organization would be bust. So let's thanks for that. Anything else you want to say on that topic before we move back to sailing?
Yeah, so listen, and Tom, people have said about the vice presidency, I actually don't know if I will run. I think for a couple of reasons. I would love to do it at some point in my career, and I will see how things evolve over the next 12 months. But just so that you hear it first, the reality for me is, it takes a huge amount of time and commitment. I am stepping down as the president of the 49er class next year in May. And my intention is to remain in the NACRA class. I still think we have a lot of work to do there. I'm passionate about it, but it also requires my personal life to be flexible enough to take on that kind of role and responsibility. And, I do think I can add a lot of value to our organization, but the reality is until such time as I know I can dedicate the kind of time and commitment that it requires, then I'm not really going to put myself in that position. That just doesn't do world sailing any justice. It doesn't do me any justice.
Well,
and both of those have to be aligned.
That's fair. And you're young, you've got a lot more years to give to the sport, and we appreciate all you are doing.
I have a few gray hairs now as well, Tom, and it's time to start bringing some new blood in.
Well, that'll happen as well. I appreciate your frankness and forthrightness. But by the way, if you do decide to run, come on this show and make the announcement. We've had Gerardo made his announcement here. Luca Devoti made his announcement here, and we'd welcome that. And as I say, you got a big worldwide audience. We typically have people live here from Malta to Melbourne, and sometimes as far west as Perth, and through Cape Town and Brazil and elsewhere. Don't we?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, let me switch us back to sailing. And I've got a video from your race yesterday, which you kindly sent. And let me run this, give you and me a break for a second, and then let's come back and talk about what the prospects are for the rest of the regatta, and particularly the people who are sailing and maybe doing not so well on the first day, and maybe we think are going to do better down the road.
For sure.
Race 1, 49ers, clean start.
The voice of Peter Lester.
Nice start at the windward end by Germany and France. Australia down to leeward. Interesting that a lot of boats quickly, Rod, wanted to get onto port, start on starboard, tack over onto port. 2 French boats, 180 from France, and then down to leeward, boat showing in second position. So great first windward beat by the French combination. They'll come round here and they'll bear off. They'll make a left-hand turn. They'll set their Jenica and head off down to the bottom mark. So at the first mark for the 49er Worlds, it's France 1 and 2. That massive lead that the leading boat had at the beginning looks like they've run out of breeze, and down on the other side of the track, over towards the beach side, over towards Kohimarama, they've come gold, and they're almost laying down to the bottom mark.
Yeah, that's a big wind shift. That's the one that you and I thought was going to be there for the first beat and didn't front up.
But it's showing now. That is so that jibe set, you'd have to say, by the race leader was.
Now, Marcus, this is an example of what we would see if we signed up for the 15 euros to the app. You get the first race of the day is free to air, and then after that, you sign up once for 15 euros and you get the rest of the regatta, right?
Exactly. And just to be clear, the race live is actually on our Facebook page. It's not actually through the app, so that you should go onto the Facebook first and then the app for the rest of it. That's the way we're doing it down here. And look, Tom, a little bit of this is hacked together as we go. We're trying to get, as I say, get better, but we're hoping we're putting on a good show. And because of the interest around Olympic qualification and some of the heroes of our sport, I think it's worth looking at that and kind of supporting us, and we want feedback too. We know we made some mistakes yesterday. We know there was actually when Peter Burling capsized, his tracker went under the water. We lost coverage, and all of a sudden, if you look at the tracking, he jumped a bunch of places, and then there was a buffering phase, which we'll all be familiar with using Skype, and that caused a lot of trouble. We were confused ourselves if we weren't looking at it live, and we're trying to get better at some of this stuff. But it is exciting.
You know what the solution to that is? We do the Governor's Cup Balboa Yacht Club, and we and the Congressional Cup folks at Long Beach Yacht Club have more or less paralleled this, and we started out with bloody iPhones. With small triangle on the horizon, which is what the America's Cup looked like in 1980 and 83 when they started televising or even filming it before that, back in the 50s. So we've come a long way, and what you're doing is remarkable, and again, full marks to you. The thing that I object to most about this coverage, any coverage, not yours, I'm not picking on you, is that it's so hard to cover it. And look at the America's Cup and Sail GP now do this with the announcers in a sound booth at the broadcast center
in New York.
And in New York, as Julia's saying, in Sail GP, you've got Jody Shields, who's standing there somewhere near you, or maybe he's in the television booth now doing your work, and he's in London doing the live play-by-play for Sail GP, the same way that Whisper Films, which also does Formula One, now does it for Cosby. Formula One's a little easier because the cars are all around the track and you can't really see what's going on by being on track. You got to watch the monitors. No. The problem with sailing is that if the commentators are not out on the water, they don't see things like Pete and Blair capsizing. They don't see a big change. They can't really read the water. It's hard to see the wind shifts in the water. The guys are at Star Sailors League down in Nassau. I watched it all morning while I was preparing the show. They've got Shirley Robertson on the water. So you've got to really have a good on-the-water person if you're not out there yourselves, and even if you are, it helps to have the good on-the-water reporter. Governor's Cup, we do it. We have a big power boat, and we've learned over the years on how to do this with bonded cellular, and we actually have switching the show and the cameras and the drones all being run from this mother ship, which is the way when they did the Cup in Auckland, in 2000, 2003, Peter Montgomery and co. were out on the water on North Star, and they can see, Gary Jobson for ESPN, they can see what's going on, whereas if they're in a comment announce booth watching monitors. And that's the thing we have to do, I think, for our sport, for it to make sense for the commentators.
If I could just give you one small rebuttal, Tom, I fully agree with you. It's great when you're able to get on the water. Just don't forget that all of the that what we're doing here is we're running 4 race courses live at the same time. And I think therein is one of the real challenges. Yes, we could focus, we could get the 2 guys and put them on a boat out there, but they're actually also covering kind of some of the other stories that are happening. And if you go down to the studio, you would see the booth.
Fair point.
But,
so Marcus, how does golf handle that?
Yep, they have guys at different holes.
At each of the holes. Okay, we're going up now to hole 17 as so-and-so approaches, and they cover that. And, okay, it's an expense, I get it, but I just, my now 30-plus years of watching, more than that, 40-plus years of watching the sport and commentating and trying to cobble together TV like this, and I have a fairly good understanding that you just need to be out there on the water, and we have to start to factor that in, or else our coverage is going to be, frankly, limited. Julia, let me go to Julia.
Bill Wingrove is just commenting, Shirley's calls on the water were way ahead of the tracker.
Well, that's the other thing. That's a good point. Watching Star Sailors League this morning, I've got Leonard Takahashi up in the corner. We're going to go to him in a second. But that's the other point, is that there is always an inevitable delay, and if people are watching the coverage on power boats, or if they're on shore and they can see, and that's delayed. But that's a small point. It's great that you're doing what you're doing. Full marks again, congrats, and so on. Let's go to Leonard Takahashi. I've talked to Leonard, and we're trying to line up a time. In fact, I said, try to find Marcus, and maybe you can cuddle up next to him there at his computer, and he's going to come on live and tell us the whole story. And I may have to get him on by tape. I may have to record him and then put him on for the Friday show. But he's a good friend of ours. He's a friend of Sailing Illustrated. He's a terrific commentator, by the way. He and Josh Wejon both. And he's out of the hospital, thank goodness. This picture is now 3 days old, but he did get hit pretty badly in the Oceania, the pre-Worlds regatta, and I guess fractured some ribs and maybe had some kidney implications. How's he doing? And tell us what you know about that incident.
So I don't know much about the incident other than it was a pretty gnarly one. And I think the unfortunate thing for Leonard was that, ribs is one thing. I think there's precedent in the past that you could possibly, if it was just ribs, you could have possibly struggled through with painkillers and so forth. Whether you should or not is a completely different argument, and I wouldn't judge anyone for that. But I think the issue was that when the liver, and I don't know the medical status of exactly what's going on, but once that was involved, I think it was a different story. And, we wish him a speedy recovery and want him back out there as soon as possible. But, it's a really interesting point, Tom. As you know, we have some injuries within the NACRA class in terms of in the past, and we're working a lot on safety, as you know, and as you've reported on the show. But I think it brings up an interesting challenge within our, as a class and within an organization, and that's medical data should be private, and we need to be a little bit careful about how much. I mean, nothing wrong with what we've just talked about, but some of that stuff is private, and we need to be a little bit careful about how much we disclose, even if we hear things. And when you're not the doctor or the person themselves and having that private chat, the rest of it is just what I've heard or what somebody has told me. And so we just need to bear that a little bit in mind.
Fair point. And we've never, ever disclosed anything except what has been told to us by the person themselves. Even if a doctor said something to us, we wouldn't use that. And I talked personally to Leonard Takahashi, and anything else in the sport, you're absolutely right. But I thought you were going to make another point, which I think is even more important or equally important, and that is that World Sailing does have a medical database, and unfortunately people, for whatever, and I'm sure it's extremely private, and I'm sure that they've got all the usual protections, but there has to be, for the sake of the sport, people reporting into that so that the medical commission of World Sailing can analyze it and take proper protective, preventive, prophylactic measures, right?
Yep. Jeez, and I think, look, it's it is working, and certainly we've been one of the I wouldn't say the big users of it, but as in we've been really engaged with that portal. I think it's really important. It gets the kind of message across that we need to understand the data, because that's what influences the decisions we make, not on gut calls or what we think. We actually need hard data, and I think that's what that is going to achieve over the longer term. And I think the way it's set up now, is a start. I think there's more we can do, but I think it's a really good first effort.
Well, suffice to say, we reported, because Leonard told us that he didn't, this was last Friday, he wasn't sure if he was going to be able to start racing yesterday or not. He was not. He decided, and I'm sure discretion was the better part of valor, so he is not sailing, and we'll keep you posted. And hopefully, as you said, Marcus, best wishes to him for a speedy recovery. He's a rising star in the sport, and I'm sure he'll recover from this and be terrific.
Yeah.
Let's talk about these guys.
So they go out in the first race yesterday and absolutely blitz everybody. It was, I mean, I was sitting in both the commentary booth and upstairs in the kind of the media room when the kind of the result came in, and we were just kind of going, how good are these guys, and who the hell can catch up with them? And then the second race, they're actually doing, they're up there. They're not winning, but they were right up there. And then they managed to capsize. And it was, I love the two guys dearly. I think they are some of the most talented sailors we've seen. And yet it's great to see that they're also human, and put it in the drink for a little bit. So it was a wry smile, not through their misfortune, but just let everybody else have a bit of a chance once in a while.
So they had a first and a 16th or something?
I don't think it was 16th. I think it was 11th. I don't have the results right in front of me, but I can pull them up.
But Pete.
But yeah, they had a deeper score.
So they have a throwout race. Everybody has a throwout race, right?
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Of course, Pete and Blair, not only members of the victorious Emirates Team New Zealand in the 2017 Cup, but also silver medalists in 2012, gold medalists in 2016 at Rio in the 49er class, and must be the odds-on favorite for this one.
Well, you'll know more about the America's Cup than I will.
Sorry,
you were talking about
the Olympics. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. But what's interesting just about that, Tom, and we're going to have to wait to see how this week plays out, because one of the challenges these guys are doing, they're juggling some pretty big responsibilities. And, notwithstanding that first race yesterday, the fact that they are spending so much time on the AC75 and not sailing the 49er, I think it remains to be seen just how much that affects them. But I would certainly not bet against them. They're too good. They have too much kind of muscle memory in terms of the boat. They have a phenomenal coach in Hamish. It's like the team back together, and they're pulling out all the stops, and they will be. I do think they're the odds-on favorite, but it will be interesting to see just how they juggle those two competing responsibilities.
And their coach is Hamish.
I'm just drawing a blank.
Is it Hamish Pepper?
Nope.
Hamish somebody else.
Oh.
He's there with them now. We'll find out.
He's
somebody.
Yeah.
The nice thing about our Fozy is that somebody will be on here, or Julia will Google it for us, and we'll find out quickly. Hamish Pepper.
Hamish Wilcox.
Hamish Wilcox.
That's
right.
It.
Well done.
I knew it.
And I didn't think it was Hamish Pepper, because Hamish Pepper won race 2 today in Nassau at the Star Series.
In SSL, yeah. That's right.
SSL. So, okay, let's stop here and let you go, because I know your racing has begun now, right?
It has, and I don't know if you noticed, while I got a little bit distracted while you were talking, I was saying that somebody just popped in and said, I believe the racing is live on Facebook, or if it isn't live right now, it's going to be live very shortly.
Okay, so again,
that first race will be there.
Give us you can just Google either 49er or NACRA 17 Facebook. 17. If you Google those three things, it'll pop up. They're having their joint world championships, obviously. We've been talking about that, and a great effort in Auckland. And delighted to have the class president with us, Marcus Spillane, who's Irish by birth and grew up. Hey, do you know Ken Ryan? Your former?
I do. It's been a long time since I met him, but I just about started in World Sailing when Ken was a vice president, and then he kind of left the scene. Yeah. And I haven't seen him in a long time.
Ken was one of the guys, along with Joran Peterson, who we really invented umpiring, the three of us. And this was at my condo in Newport, Rhode Island, and we were asked by the Maxies to go out and umpire their championship in Newport, Rhode Island. And Ken and Joran Peterson, the former president of ISAF, were there. We were the jury, along with a couple other guys and gals. And Ken, as he used to carry around a bottle of your national drink.
That's right, Ishka Baha.
No,
the water of life, as it's known.
The water of life.
I like
whiskey.
No, not Irish whiskey. Although we're fond of that. On St. Patrick's Day, no, not even Guinness.
No, goodness. Tell me more.
Julia likes to have it in her coffee when she's drinking her iced coffee. Bailey's. Ken, who was the secretary of your National Olympic Committee and was chairman of the first chairman, I think, of the judges program for world sailing and senior series. He was a vice president. So he produced I'm not kidding. He produced a bottle of Bailey's, and I turned on my then IBM PC way back when, and wrote what is now the precursor to what is now the umpiring appendix with Joran, and the more Baileys we drank,
the better it got. Yeah.
I think the better it got.
Well,
so he's a fine guy and a dear friend, and if you do see him before and Margaret, his wife Margaret, we know well, and his kids. But we have a lot of people on here who made comments or questions, so let me go back here through these, if I may. Julia, hop in if you've got anything. We'll go back to I'm going to say this now. We got John Mangino and Clancy Soloway. John Schaefer saying Tom Maiden was viewed and sent out on DVD for Best Documentary Academy Awards. So coming up, that's cool. They might get an Oscar. Pedro Foiling Sailor is watching up in Australia. Paul Mello, we mentioned. Lachi Gilmore, who is part of, is one of the sons of Peter Gilmore, the celebrated, and Lachi himself is probably a better sailor than his dad at this point. But Peter, who steered in, he steered in 1987 and former multiple-time world match racing champion. I don't know if Lachi's there sailing in one of your classes, is he? Do you know Lachi Gilmore?
I do know. To be honest, I haven't seen him here. But then again, I haven't. It's funny. I don't see the entire list, believe it or not.
For sure.
But yeah.
Michael Ennis. Shout out to my mate Marcus from Ireland.
It's back to my Laser 2 days, Tom. Long time ago.
Gordon Smith, bring the action to our fans. I like that a lot. Gordon is saying of something you said half an hour or so ago. Mason Sheen, Tom Bryant, Bill Wingrove, who's watching down at Davis Island Yacht Club. Bill and I were watching SSL this morning. He's in Tampa. Alan Long, Clark Chapin, Hamish Nickel. You must know Hamish Nickel. Good guy. Mm-hmm. Niley Williamson, Clark Chapin, we mentioned. Eric Monin, Scott Dixon, Scotty Dixon, who is Chris Dixon's more famous brother. Scott is on the board at Long Beach Yacht Club, and he got Yachtsman of the Year or something, main contributor of the year at Long Beach Yacht Club, and a big award. Congrats again to Scotty Dixon, good match racer and perennial Congressional Cup competitor. Robert Deeves, you must know. Bo Teglers Nielsen, Kenny Glidewell, Ken is the vice commodore of St. Francis Yacht Club off and on. Felix Jakobsen. Stingray, that dropped the postponement flag. That we mentioned that. Gordon Smith agreeing with us. He's saying PROs have a complex job, and as well as getting the racing done, they need to take care of the volunteer officials on the water and off. Very rewarding job, but not often appreciated. Again, Marcus, we've got to spread that word, don't we?
Absolutely, and that was the perfect comment. In fact, that's another thing. There's just so many facets to being a PRO, and I think, we need to be a lot more positive for everybody that volunteers their time. We might have problems occasionally, but it's really important that we are more positive and supportive of people who give up their time. You can't ever fault somebody who volunteers, even if you disagree with their opinion or their decision or whatever it might be. They're giving up their time, and we need to respect that.
Indeed. And thanks, Gordon Smith, for that comment. Jan-Peter Anderson, Betsy Altman-Barrett, another great contributor to our sport up here in the U.S., who's in Chicago. Ben Nichols, Chris Watts. Rodian Luca is watching. Now, you know Rodian Lucan. Rodion
do.
Luca, who is the inventor of the L30, which is being used in World Sailing's first ever double-handed offshore championship, right, coming up next summer.
That's right.
Chris Welsh is watching, Steve Atkins, Ben Nichols. When will 49er, this is a question from Ben Nichols, when will 49er and NACRA buy laser? Make it 5 class.
Some people do go around and call it the Marcus and Ben Pony Show once in a while, but I think, look, we do not have intentions to do anything silly like that. I think, it works well with the way we're doing it right now. We don't want to upset the apple cart. But as you'll know, it is a kind of a priority for World Sailing to try and have more combined championships. And we do talk to all of the classes and we look at how we might kind of partner in certain ones. But we just got to remember that big multi-class championships like the Sailing World Championships, there's such a compromise for the actual sailing because it's such a huge thing to put on and you need so many race courses that actually we like it just at this size. And I think there's good value for teams and national federations to send people to, for the 3 events together.
I agree. And I know that Star Class back in the day always fought the combined world championships because it is such a bun fight. It is such a major logistics challenge. And now World Sailing is back to having just one sounds like in the mid-cycle, right? So 2020 is the Olympics. 2022 will be this combined world championships like the one they had in Aarhus in Denmark in 2018. And then again, the Olympics 2024. It is, as you said it very well, those regattas so compromise the sailing experience for the sailors. And I don't understand why we try to do that. Julia, did you have a comment you wanted to highlight? Are we okay?
Not really.
Okay. Let's wrap it up because I know you want to go watch the racing. Stingray's asking, is there more sailing video? They are live, and I don't want to mess up my Wi-Fi connection now that it's working reliably with Auckland. Johnny Durkin, Dan Nolan. Hi, Dan. John Sangmeister. So, Gordon Smith, who was a minute ago, was agreeing completely with you and I. He's saying I entirely disagree with Marcus on the comparing commercial organizations with a sporting organization. In my personal opinion, this WS governance proposal is a land grab. So he's agreeing with me on that one. We don't need to belabor that. Mark Curtis, concentration of power can be efficient and result in a strong organization. However, having checks and balances is paramount. I think he's agreeing with both of us on that. Ben Nichols, MS is compromised, a big mistake to pretend otherwise. What is MS? Did he mean WS? MS. I'm not sure what.
Marcus Spillane, am I compromised? Perhaps I don't know.
No,
my initials.
I don't think he meant you. But maybe he did. Ben, if you meant, come back. We'll see here. I by the way, I hear there was a laser. ILCO, European International Laser Class Association, big summit meeting over the weekend. I have reports from Jean-Pierre Keekins, among others, and we'll talk something about that on Friday because there's a lot of pushback from the European laser class against the international laser class, which is run, at least for the moment, by a couple of Americans, the president and the class secretary. Eric Champagne, Rob Colgate, Doug Augustine. A lot of folks on here. I'm just seeing if there's any other questions. Stingray, Rob, hello from Cape Town. So Ted Ryman's on. Hello, Ted. You guys are really turning into a power force in sailing media. Great show, Joe Cool. Thank you very much. Well, it's because we have cool guests like Marcus. And, Marcus, when we first started this 2.5 years ago, we're about to get to our 250th show. Julia, we talked about that. When our 250th show is going to be?
Yes, Christmas.
It's going to be on Australian Boxing Day. It looks like, Marcus, our 250th show is going to be
a watch party.
The watch party for the start of the Sydney Hobart on our Christmas night on Boxing Day down under. So we'll see. But when we started this, it was, you want to come on the show? Well, not really now. We got guests lined up for months and on and off. In fact, if people want to come on, and we appreciate it because our viewers appreciate it, And I think we are shedding light. I mean, people didn't know who you are. They hear about Marcus Spillane and he's this and that and good or bad. And I think you've really represented yourself in the class well today, Marcus. Class says.
Thank you very much, Tom. And I mean, one thing I just kind of point out is, look, it is important to have your show and other shows. Technology has evolved to where we can now do this kind of thing. And I think the really important thing that you've been doing as part of Sailing Illustrated, whether we agree or disagree, that's fine. That's actually healthy in my view. But the fact is there's now a forum where people can get more educated on what the issues are. And by you interviewing guests from different parts of our sport, I think that's what comes across. And I think that's really important because, again, without going back to the kind of the politics side, when you go to something like a World Sailing Organization, the amount of people that show up or start reading what's happening a week or 2 weeks beforehand is a little too much, in my opinion. We need people to be better educated about what the issues are. And your show certainly delivers on that. And, kudos to you for doing that. And, it comes across well. And as I hopefully keep it up. And, it's great that the viewership is growing as well.
Thanks for that. Athanasios.
Yeah.
Athanasios Papantoniou.
That's Sulis. Better known as Sulis.
Sulis.
One of our race officers, yeah.
Hello, he says. He or she? He must be.
He.
From Thessaloniki.
Right.
Thessaloniki in Greece. Nice seeing Marcus on Sailing Illustrated. Thank you.
Stingray asks if he has a middle name, too.
Who? Athanasios?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. I was born in a Greek town in Michigan called Ypsilanti. It was named after the famous Greek general Demetrius Ypsilantis. So I have a warm spot in my heart. Marina Siku who's also Greek, is on here. She's in Athens. Andrew McPherson, Steve Gruber, Stingray. Gordon Smith, too many organizations collect too much data and no one really challenges why. Well, that's a point, but I do think Gordon, that we've got to, in private, it's one way or another, we've got to get this medical data so that the medical commission can start to make informed decisions and judgments. Stingray saying Burling and Tuker's unbeatable, seriously impressive. I think they are too. I think you'll see. Okay, go ahead, Julia.
Radion Lucas watching from Ukraine.
Yeah, he is Ukrainian.
Yep,
he is Ukrainian, right. and they're
silver medalist in the 2004 Olympics, I think, in the 49er.
Correct.
Yes, I think it was 2004. Yeah,
hell of a good sailor, no doubt. Okay, well, we should probably wrap this up, and I've got a couple other topics to cover. Marcus, anything else in summary before we let you go?
No, listen, Tom, as I say, we can all differ in opinion. I think it is important that we all try and educate ourselves on what the real issues are. And, a bit like the situation in the US at the moment, we've got to kind of try and read between the lines. When you hear two sides of any story, sometimes you got to remember that there's an agenda, and that includes my own, I'll freely admit. But you need to kind of look at these things, not cynically, but with a degree of kind of holistic overview of what the challenges are. I think that's the first thing. I think we've got to try and support these types of efforts. And I do not mean by just subscribing and paying for this service that we're doing down here. I'm just talking about we've tried for a long time to broadcast our sport, to try and make it a little bit more interesting. We're still learning. We know that. And again, it's great when we get supportive comments rather than just people saying that was crap or why didn't the trackers work or whatever. We know some of these issues ourselves and we're trying to improve on that. And as technology improves, it will get better. But, we love trying to portray the sport. We love trying to show just how good the likes of a Pete Burling and Blair Tuker, even, talking about the women, Alex Maloney and Molly Meach and Martine Grail, for example. We like being able to show those people to the sporting audience. And that's really what we're trying to do here, as well as run an organization that at least delivers for the sailors. Because ultimately what I have to remember, and when we professionalize the administration of these three classes, the entire intent about professionalizing was to reflect the fact that our sailors are professional. This is their livelihood. And just to have a bunch of volunteers, running around trying to put together these events just isn't good enough anymore. And so the stakes are always rising. It also means there's more pressure on to deliver, and that's challenging. But again, I come back to this thing. Everybody involved in our sport anybody who gives time to our sport, regardless of whether we disagree with them or not, they should be commended for that effort, because it is voluntary for the most part. And, that is the basis of our sport.
Indeed. Well said. Marcus Spillane. We wanted to call you Mickey Spillane.
Oh, yes, it's
Julia
hard
did.
not to. Hard not to.
Many do. Don't worry.
Marcus Spillane live from Auckland via Skype. I'm glad we got whatever happened. The Skype came good there. Probably
Yeah,
Ben
in the end,
probably Ben Remmacher working behind the scenes. He probably went around and made everybody else turn off their
Exactly.
Wi-Fi connections down there at the Royal Akarana Yacht Club. Best wishes for the rest of the event. We'll be watching, and if people want to watch it, they can go on to your Facebook pages for either the 49er or the NACRA 17. Just Google, I don't even give the URL, 49er or NACRA 17. Google that along with Facebook. Up it pops, and you can watch the first race of the day live, free to air, and then after that, if you pay 15 euros once, you get to watch the rest of it. Congrats on this experiment. Best wishes for success.
Thanks a million, Tom. See you, Julia. Bye-bye.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. Thank you very much. Okay, that's Marcus Spillane, as we said, live via Skype from Auckland. We want to welcome a lot of other folks on here. And, it's funny, you hear about people who you don't really know until you get them on, get face-to-face, talk, whether it's on the show or over a beer or a glass of wine someplace. You find out you end up with a lot of things in common, some views that we disagree on, no doubt. But there are people in the sport, my experiences over the long haul, and I've been at this now for a long time, and my experience is that people, you think, oh, that Bruce Farr is a terrible guy. He and I fought during the America's Cup days, and then we ended up on a team together. And Bruce Farr famously said at the first design meeting, "You've got that guy Ehman. He's your rules advisor and strategy. I can't work with him. He's terrible." Well, by the end of the campaign, I'm not kidding, Julia. By the end of the campaign, Farr and I were best friends. Bruce Farr and the rest of his gang. And it's because you get to know each other, you get to respect each other, and you come good. And I've got a renewed respect, great deal of respect for Marcus Spillane now, having talked to him, as well as some other people who others will say, and you can't really take what other people say about it,
Yeah. That's one really important thing which we are trying to do, and that is put personalities behind names.
And also put the past behind us, as Pumbaa would say in Lion King. You got to put the past behind us because, I said stupid things, did stupid things. I don't know about you. You probably didn't do any stupid things. Did you?
Of course.
Huh?
Everybody do.
Okay. Let's get on with the rest of the show.
Ali Dinas is in Thailand.
Yeah, and Ali Dinas is in Thailand. She's just waking up probably there. She's at Phuket at the King's Cup. Ali Dinas, I have a date to interview her tomorrow night, Wednesday, which is Thursday her time. That's her lay day, their lay day during the King's Cup. And I'll have that live to tape. We'll have a recording of my interview with her from Phuket in the King's Cup on Friday, on our TFE Live Fridays. But let's get to this event in Nassau, the Star Sailors League. And I cannot say enough about the television coverage this morning. It was arguably the best TV coverage I have ever seen. Ever. Let me say that again. Ever. Not forget about America's Cup. Forget about ever. Sail GP. It's really, really good. And I commend it to you. Here's I don't have live video yet. They haven't put it up, or otherwise I'd run it here on the computer live. But this is the teaser video that I ran on Friday last week. I thought we should run again. Have a look. Okay, so it started today, and it's obviously in Nassau. It runs through the 7th. Or what's the 7th? 3, 4, 5. That's Saturday, right? I think the big prize giving is Saturday night. Not only is the television coverage good, but the format is superb. They've got, you look at the list of people in the 26 teams, whatever it is, from as many countries, and you will never see, I have never seen such a star-studded lineup at any one event ever, even more so than the Olympics. The density, everyone there is good. They got some young guys that are coming out of, the Croatian Tonci Stepanovic and some of these other guys who are brand new. You got people from the World Match Racing League. You got veteran star sailors like Kayard. I commend this to you as arguably the best event in our sport. And come 2021, when the SSL does their big boat thing and the 40-foot, what are the RC44s are going to be cut down to, I guess, RC40s. And when they get to that, with their big 40 countries and elimination and down to it's going to be magnificent, even if it's only half as good as this. Now, something else that's good about this is the format. This is standard, windward, leeward. They have an offset mark, what the commentators today were calling the separation. They had a new word for it that I like, which reminds me that's one of the things we need to do in our sport. And it's happening naturally because the Aussies and the Kiwis and the Brits and the Americans and others have different words for different things. I mean, the Brits have called what we call a boom vang, they call it a kicker. And we call it an offset mark. You go to the windward mark and then go to an offset mark, and today they were calling it the separation mark or something. It's a small point, but we need to universalize the language with which we are using to televise the sport. Because it's hard enough for people who are ESL, English second or even third language, for them to understand what the hell we're talking about.
Let alone those of us who speak English.
Well, let alone people who are non-sailors.
Yeah.
Who, maybe don't have a freaking clue. So we need to work on that. But these guys, I digress. These guys are doing a fabulous job. The television is free to air. They've got a big backer. They've got some sponsors now. They've got Nassau as a backer in the Bahamas, of course, and it is superb. Now, I watched it all morning while I was preparing the show, and I managed to grab these standings. There's a provisional, so I don't know if there were any protests or any other problems, but look at the names. Not just the skippers, but the crews as well. You've got more medalists, more America's Cup, more Volvo Ocean Race type or the Ocean Race type people in this list. And this is just the top 13. Astonishing. The last race today, they did 2 races a day, so it's windward, offset, mark, leeward, windward, offset, leeward. It's just about the right time. It takes 30, 35, maybe 40 minutes. There's a quick break, and they do it again, and then they go home. Easy to understand. The races are long enough, and it's fleet racing now that will devolve down to the 4 boats in the finals, which is really easy to understand, but it still is enough action that it's exciting. But there was a pass at the finish today when Hamish Pepper passed ahead of Ian Percy and just at the finish line, and it was by better technique. They got a little puff on their side of the track that Ian didn't get on theirs that Hamish Pepper got. And again, the crews, the skippers, the whole thing is first class. The media effort, I commend it to you. Go on to Star Sailors League. It's live at, I think it was at 10 o'clock here. I think I watched it from 10 till noon, so add 3 hours to that, 1 till 3 approx. Eastern time, I think was the time. But you can go on SSL, Star Sailors League, on their YouTube, and I think it's Facebook, maybe for sure on their YouTube channel. The commentary team, I don't know the lady. Her name's Helen something. I don't remember having seen her before, but she is terrific. She's a sailor, but she's not a heavy-duty, hardcore racing sailor, but she knows enough about the sport to be communicative. And this gentleman, Maurice O'Connell, who I think they call Prof, or the professor, is maybe, I don't want to overemphasize this, is maybe the best sailing commentator I have heard since Peter Montgomery. And the guy is really good. Simple, clear explanations. And if I were a non-sailor, I think he does what I try to do when I'm commentating with Andy Rose, but he does it in even a better way, not talking down to the audience. I mean, he doesn't make it too simple. He doesn't talk down to the audience. He's really terrific. And, of course, they have Shirley Robertson, who's everybody's favorite, who's Jody Shields' partner now in Sail GP, or at least was at the end of the year. And she's doing the on the water, and it's terrific. I commend it to you. Okay, enough of SSL. We'll cover that all week and have more on Friday. Maybe we won't have any live because by the time we come on the air at 13, they're done. That's 16 their time in the East Coast and the Eastern time zone. So another cool thing that's going on in the sport is this Brest Atlantiques race, the big, huge, well, that's being redundant, the huge trimarans that have been racing around the Atlantic Ocean, starting in Brest and finishing in Brest. It looks like tomorrow, Franck Camas, he's just such a great guy, and Charles Caudrelier, and their media man, Jan Ryu, are expected to be crowned the winners of the Brest Atlantiques on Wednesday morning, following 24 hours going at very high speeds off the Bay of Biscay. Maxi Edmond de Rothschild is expected to finish in lighter winds and claim its first major victory just less than 2.5 years after its launch.
In the next 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah, so even less than that now. So
yeah.
I took that off their website.
No, Daniel Gruen just...
he did?
Sent the message that they should finish in
tomorrow morning, as I think
the next 2 or 3 hours.
Oh, 2 or 3 hours even. So let's see, it's 14, almost 15 here. Add 9 to that, so that's midnight. So yeah, 3 in the morning could be about right. Okay, cool stuff. And we'll report more fully on that on Friday. America's Cup. There's a fair bit of America's Cup news. We told you that 30th of November was the 2020 ACWS deadline. What about Portsmouth? We've been telling you that there was going to be probably a regatta in Portsmouth. Remember, they're starting in Colliery. They're starting in Colliery in April with the first ACWS, America's Cup World Series. The challenger of record, who is Prada, Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli, CVS, their club, Circolo Vela della Sicilia, the Italian team, is the challenger of record, and they make decisions by mutual consent with the defender. The defender, of course, being the Royal New Zealand Yacht Squadron, Emirates Team New Zealand, their representative team. They have apparently decided that there will be a regatta in Portsmouth, although the announcement was this 2-paragraph, well, we've made the decision, but we won't announce the schedule for 2020 unless and until we can do it in concert with the venues. One hears that, just as we've been telling you for a couple of weeks, they have arm twisted the challenger of record on behalf of the other challengers to agree to this regatta in Portsmouth in April in Colliery and then in June in Portsmouth. I understand Sir Ben Ainsley's team does not want the regatta. That's their home base in Portsmouth. New York Yacht Club, Terry Hutchinson, that American Magic, they don't want it because it's a distraction. It ties their boats up. They can't use them to practice. It's also a problem for Emirates Team New Zealand, frankly, but they've got an airline as their sponsor, Emirates Airline, and they'll fly the boat over, and they'll ship it up, presumably all in the same ship, and then fly it back to Auckland. After the Portsmouth Regatta, which, by the way, we also told you was going to happen, we thought, because the chairman of Emirates Team New Zealand, of Emirates Airlines rather, lives in London, has a house in Portsmouth, big home in Portsmouth, and Emirates Airlines also sponsors that Spinnaker Tower in Portsmouth. So this regatta is apparently going to happen. One of the reasons we hear that Ineos Team UK isn't really too keen on the regatta is that Ineos gets protested by the green coalitions, the greenies, wherever they have an event, and they don't just sponsor sailing, they also sponsor cycling and a couple other things. So that is going to happen in Portsmouth, but they haven't announced it. Just saying, well, we've made the decision, and we did it by the protocol deadline of November 30th, but we're not going to tell you what that decision is. I mean, excuse me, guys. And then Richard Gladwell, my dear friend, wrote a big article defending their non-publication of the decision, saying that, well, Peter Rush did the same thing in 2017 when Peter Rush was the PR for the America's Cup 35 in Bermuda. Well, I'm not sure Peter did that at all, but in any event, we wonder why people think our sport is confusing. We say, oh, there's going to be a regatta, but we're not going to tell you where or when. After the Portsmouth Regatta, everyone will ship their boats to New Zealand. The bases should be available middle of the year, middle of their winter in Auckland. Teams will get down there. They'll start training and practicing. There will be then 2 regattas in Auckland, probably November and for sure in December, the so-called Christmas regatta before the holidays. And those regattas are also on or so one here. So 4 regattas, which is in accordance with the protocol, next year, 2020, as we've just laid out. Now, here is a piece of video from World Sailing, their monthly television show, and it's really one of the few times. Usually that show is just so far, the stuff is old news, but this was useful information about the 4 teams and their foiling, and I thought just for review's sake, it's the one place I've seen where somebody other than on this show, where we've shown all the foiling video of all 4 teams, not counting Long Beach because no one thinks they're a real team. And what are you laughing? Do you think they're a real team?
They're trying to be.
You said that off mic so nobody can
I
hear
did.
me. Anyway, enjoy this video. It's brief, and I think you'll find it cool.
Luna Rossa America's Cup team has finally released footage of their new boat foiling. So the world has now seen all 4 teams in action on their first version boats. The Italian team, who are the challenger of record, put the boat through its paces as part of a feverish testing process ahead of the first event of the America's Cup World Series, which will take place in Sardinia next April. Speed equals stability in these foiling monohulls, and crew member Shannon Falcone told us what it was like.
You don't have a visual sense of getting up on the foils. It's more the sense of acceleration and the sound switching from water on the hull to just apparent wind speed, which you can't hear the guy next to you talking. As a team, we're really invested in finding new talent, especially within Italy. So we have a lot of young guys on the team that a lot of them hadn't even sailed big boats. Some of them hadn't even really sailed. They're like Olympic rowers and so on.
So we head into 2020 with 4 teams and 4 boats out on their home waters, learning exactly what they can and cannot do in them.
The development never stops. And that's not only in the lead up to the competition, but more so during competition. So the first event in Cagliari, when all the boats line up for the first time, will be another huge stepping stone learning curve, validation for everyone.
Okay, a huge stepping stone. Shannon Falcone is just a terrific guy. I'm glad to see him being interviewed. Notice we didn't see any tacks or jibes in any of that. And the one where it looked like Luna Rossa Prada Pirelli was changing tack. Was that a tack or a jibe? No, I can't remember. They cut to the foil shot, and then you came back when it looked like they had come about. Okay, but good video, good comparison. These 4 teams are all working really hard. Say what you might about this. I still continue to believe this is going to be a cool event. Somebody is probably going to win by a lot. The chances of these boats being like and similar, to use Michael Fay's court descriptions, when he tried to enforce on us in '88 that we had to defend with a boat that was like and similar to his Challenger. Well, these boats are, we've already seen, are quite different. Now, speaking of that, Grant Simmer, who is the CEO of Ineos Team UK, Sir Ben Ainsley's CEO, has done an interview on their team website, and it is really, really cool. He was asked, again, this is an internal interview, so their PR is asking him the questions that he wants to answer. What are the key areas you think could win the 36th Cup? The things that will win the next edition are the ability to sail the boat at close to optimum performance for the most time, meaning foil-borne, during the race, having the best foil package. Rudders and foils will be important. No, no shiza. And the ride control, how you control the ride of the boat. All things we've been telling you for months, and everyone else who knows anything about the Cup will tell you, will agree with that. He then was asked, how critical is hull shape in this Cup to assist foiling? And could we see something radical here for Boat 2? Remember, all the teams have now built their Boat 1s. We've seen them. We just saw a video of their Boat 1s. And now that everyone else has seen each other's boats, what will happen? What will their second designs? Because they've all had to commit to those designs now, or essentially now, probably a month ago, and start to build them if they're going to be ready next summer, our summer, middle of next year, so when they get to Auckland, they can start training with their new boat. He said, we could definitely see something quite radical. There's enough scope in the rules, ! ETNZ's boat with the central bustle and the Luna Rosa boat with the Sima, that big spline down the middle. It looks more like a moth or a canoe even. He's saying those boats are clearly designed for foiling and not for displacement sailing, because there's too much drag. There's a lot of hull in the water. That tells us, he says, as Grant Simmer, that they are not planning on racing in low wind speeds. They are planning to race in foiling conditions, which begs the question of the wind limits, if any, which still have not been exposed. And the wind limits are due by 20th of December. The match conditions under the protocol, the Challenger record defender have to issue the match conditions, which will have things like wind limits, the course configuration, which they've all been talking. The teams are sort of aware of what their plans are. But here's a regatta that's happening in just, the Challenger Selection Series in 13 months after these conditions will come out. Not much time to plan or prepare. And they don't yet really know a lot of the ground rules. I'd be screaming bloody murder, but then I'm not doing the Cup this time, except as a journalist.
Well, yes.
As a journalist. Okay. Now, do you know who this gentleman is, Julia? Pasquale Cataldi is back in the news, the Italian gentleman who was, for a brief time, the head of the Maltese Challenge, better known as the Malta Altus Challenge, representing the Royal Malta Yacht Club, where our friend Georges Bonella Dupuy is off and on watching as our furthest viewer to the east. At least normally he is. Mm-hmm. The Royal Malta Yacht Club and the Malta Altus Challenge withdrew from the event months ago. But wait, there's more, because Ian Murray, who was set to be the CEO of the team, and the other Ian, famous Ian Percy, who's racing in Nassau in the Star Sailors League, was set to be the skipper. They, along with some of the other senior series people, have filed for arbitration against Mr. Cataldi for monies owed. They had contractual obligations. They spent in some cases, a lot of their own money. And one hears reliably that this is all in arbitration. I know who the arbitrator is. The appointed gentleman is Senior Series European, one of the most famous sports arbitrators. Arbitors? Arbitors are, come on, you went to Stanford. Arbitors or arbitrator? Probably both.
I've heard trader, but yeah.
Whoever the gentleman is in charge of the arbitration, I know who it is, and that decision is pending, or so one hears. And whether they ever collect any money from the guy is another issue. But this is why Long Beach Yacht Club has a problem, because they continue to hang out as a challenger, and they continue to expose themselves for liabilities and otherwise. They've sent out a big fund. I have the letter. I'm not going to run it because it's private within the club, to their members and friends and family, urging them to contribute to Stars Plus Stripes Team USA, their Long Beach Yacht Club representative team run by Mike Buckley. And I don't know why they continue to stay in, except that we hear that they're pressured by the Kiwis to do so, because they owe the Kiwis a lot of money for the design package they bought for them. There is now not enough time. Okay, there's an announcement tomorrow, or so I'm told. And what I believe, and I don't know, I'm speculating now. This is pure speculation. I believe that you're going to hear, if not tomorrow, shortly, that the Challenger of Record and Defender also agreed to excuse one boat teams, meaning Stars and Stripes, it's the only one-boat team, from having to participate in Colliery or in Portsmouth. Because this, whatever announcement's coming, is purported to be of help to Stars plus Stripes Team USA, the Long Beach Yacht Club's team, or so I hear. Now, I think they don't have a snowball's chance in hell because they don't have time now to assemble a team, to finish building a boat, to get it. Even if they suddenly, somebody came down and gave them $60 million, they'd be hard-pressed to get a boat physically finished, shipped, a team assembled, trained, and so on, to make the regattas in Auckland late next year, let alone the Challenger Selection Series in January, February of 2021. And if by some tiny, minuscule chance they were successful, to get to be in the match. So I just don't think they have a chance, even if tomorrow there is an announcement saying they have been excused from Colliery and an eventual regatta in Portsmouth. Okay, more news on the Sail GP front. We've been telling you that Sir Ben Ainslie is taking over the Sail GP GBR team, and they announced that a week ago today in London with Russell Coutts and Chris Draper. Let me back that up. Chris Draper, who was sailing on the team and was CEO of the team this year in 2019, will continue as CEO, running the team for Ben Ainslie, but Ben is going to drive, and of course Sir Russell running Sail GP, and there's some real flux, there's some things in flux. We got a couple of comments here from people. We had some inside information after we'd gone to air, which I'm not going to go into now, but Sail GP is definitely in flux for 2020. We'll see. But we've been telling you to watch this space because of the 6 teams this year. We know that a 7th boat has been built in Warkworth, and it was being built. And which of these teams, we know GBR is now subsumed. They're the team on the left, has been subsumed by Sir Ben Ainslie. It'll be interesting to see if the French team, Billy Besson, and Billy's very, very fine sailors down sailing in NACRA 17s in with Marie Rioux down in Auckland at the regatta we've just been talking about. And it'll be interesting to see if he carries on with the French Sail GP team. This is pure speculation. I have not heard. Someone like Franck Camas or Charles Caudrelier will end up with that team, in my opinion, because it's an inexpensive way to have major sponsor awareness, and it's all working. And Russell's got the thing teed up, and the teams are under pressure to come up with $5 million from sponsorship revenue for the next season. So this is why they reported. Rome Kirby, who's been running the U.S. team, did not have a very successful go. I think finished DFL in the standings. And whether somebody like Mike Buckley and Taylor Canfield, Taylor's been sailing on that team, whether they get some sponsorship and they go along and subsume the U.S. team, that's a possibility. You're not going to see a replacement for the Australian team. They're the defending champ, Tom Slingsby. I don't think you're going to see a replacement for the Japanese team, although Japan and China are also apparently in flux. But I don't think you're going to see a big change. The Japanese team with Nathan Outeridge was very competitive. But we've been telling you there is going to be a 7th team, that a boat was under construction in Warkworth, which is the facility owned by Larry Ellison down the North Shore north of Auckland. And we can tell you that the 7th team, we continue to tell you we believe will be Denmark. And we've been hearing reliably that it'll be a Danish team, and that the reason they haven't announced more than the first 4 events, 5 events now, they've announced Sydney, San Francisco, New York, and Cowes. Cowes to be coincident with either just before or just after Cowes Week. Then there will be a 5th event. It was in Marseille last year. One hears it will be in Aarhus, Denmark. We talked about Aarhus earlier in the show. Aarhus after Cowes, sometime later next year, and it will be a Danish team. And guess what? Russell Coutts himself, on his Facebook page last night, put these pictures of an all-red F50, foiling 50, the boats being used in Sail GP, the one design version of the boats used in Bermuda during the America's Cup. And Here was the boat as it was being splashed with the flag on the side. You see that, Julia?
Yes, I somebody put it there.
You think?
I think so.
You think I'd do something like that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, well, the truth is I did. I photoshopped that in. That flag, I spent too much time doing that this morning, but it was good fun. So it is a red boat. We've been telling you it at least had red bows, and the whole boat is red. Now, we could be wrong. I don't think so. It could be Canada with a big white maple leaf on there. I know they've been talking with Canada and Toronto, particularly in specific, about a regatta, but I don't think so. Denmark is a huge sailing country. The president of World Sailing has been doing deals with Russell, and one here's Jonas Hoch Christensen, whose dad is a senior serious guy in North Sails. I think that's who that's going to be, and not the Swiss either, but one never knows. I think it's going to be Denmark. Won't bet my life on it, but
we may know soon.
We may know soon. We'll see. Okay, Bravo Zulu to these guys. And who are these guys? You can see it's black, but I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to run the video. Bravo Zulu to them, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Ian, first of all, 75 years at the City of Hobart. To you, why has this race become so iconic over so many years?
Look, I think, Sydney Harbour is a very wonderful place around the world in terms of world's waterways, and Sydney Hobart race is one of the great things that happens on Sydney Harbour, and many of them think. And to marry that up with, I think, 75 years of this race, Bass Strait, Tasmania, the Derwent River, there's a romance and history there that's incredibly strong. There's been some incredible feats, some incredible recorded history, some incredible challenges, and I think for us as sailors, taking on all of those challenges represents really what we're all about, and so this race brings us back every year to have another go.
You're facing a big challenge at the moment. Can you tell us what actually happened to the boat?
So a couple of weeks ago we were in the Cabbage Tree Island race, which was a qualifying race for the Sydney to Hobart, and sailing in quite strong southwesterly wind, and we were ripping along off Terrigal, ploughed into a little bit of a wave, and the mast failed in compression, and that meant it then went down onto the deck, broke the rigging, and we miraculously limped into Newcastle some 40 miles later and managed to retrieve the main part of the mast, and we've set about repairing the boat from there, which is a big portion of new deck, a new bottom in the mast, new rigging, check everything else. So really big job.
Ian, so you were worried that the boat might actually sink? Was that your first thought?
Well, when you hear cracking carbon fibre and you can't really identify the problem, there's always a chance that, I've been on a boat that's sunk, so it's a thought that's in your mind. If you can't see where the problem is, there's obviously a problem, and until you pinpoint what's going on, it's, you have to be prepared, and, we set out a pan, which is stand by, there might be a problem here. But then we realised what had happened, secured the situation, and went into Newcastle. So, we were very fortunate to get the parts into Newcastle, otherwise we wouldn't be here having this conversation.
You made a lot of modifications to the boat over the last 15 years or so. Is this like the biggest overhaul? Does it put any more uncertainty about your preparations than in previous years?
Well, I wouldn't call this an overhaul. We had made some variations to the boat over the last 6 months, and that was good to see them working the way we thought they would in the Cabbage Tree Island race. The boat was performing really well, and obviously this is a little bit of a setback, but the boat has a great crew, it has an incredible support mechanism behind it, and very passionate owners, and I think, for us, it shouldn't be any detriment to our performance in the race.
So you'll be ready for race day?
We'll be ready for race day.
Were you ever worried that you might not be ready for race day?
I think, when we heard all those cracking noises and, there's 140 feet of mast flapping around, 15 miles off Terrigal, there was, a lot of concern that we wouldn't be in the race.
Okay, that's obviously Ian Murray, who's the tactician on Wild Oats, on Woxie, has been forever. He is the he was been the regatta director for the last couple of America's Cups. He made the joke about jumping off a boat when their boat, Australia, whatever it was, sank off Point Loma in 1995. It was in the 95 Cup. And that boat, Banana, had split down the middle, and he was in the back of the boat and one of the last guys to jump off. So this is interesting stuff. Thanks to Jeff Waller and World on Water for that clip. And the good news is, and it was the first I'd heard, that they've said definitively they will make the race. So they've repaired the mast, apparently are in the process of repairing the mast, and they're going to be in the Sydney Hobart, and we expect to carry, as we did the last couple of years, we'll carry that live, at least the start, a watch party on Christmas night on our 25th for their start on the 26th on Boxing Day down in Sydney. And we wish best wishes to Waxy getting back and getting fit and on the water.
That's great news.
Isn't that good news?
Yes.
So I'm happy for Ian. Let's see if he has anything else to say. He's been asked if they're going to be 100%.
As a result of what's happened, but we're still analysing it. We'll get to the bottom of it by the time we go to Hobart. I'm sure we'll have a very strong understanding of
you said the bottom
why
of
the boat's broken.
You said the bottom of the mast arrived yesterday. How long would it take to put two pieces together?
Look, it's putting the boat back together. The new parcel of the deck, new portion of the deck is fitted and it's being bonded in, and all these other parts have got to come back. So we'd like to think we can get there for the 10th, fitting the mast.
They have some pre-regattas in Sydney Harbour, as many of you will know, leading up to the start of the Sydney Hobart on the 26th on Boxing Day. But the good news is they're going to be there, and Ian was also asked in the course of this interview, would they be dialing back at all? And he said, no chance. We'll be going full speed ahead. And he was there. You can hear him being asked, what's it cost? So what kind of a question is that? They're not going to answer that. Okay, Julia.
He also said, if there are any other problems, we'll know them by the time we get to Hobart.
by the time we get to Hobart. What a great guy he is. Funny guy, and sober, decent human being, one of the best in the sport. Now, I'll tell you one other piece of news. I'm going to stop that video right there. See, I can even, Julia, look at this. I can go forward one frame at a time.
Wow.
See that? Or I can go back one frame at a time. We keep improving our technology here. But I just want to stop that and say, one also hears that there is a good chance that the current regatta director, the person who's been announced as the regatta director for AC 36, he's already been announced, one hears that Ian Murray may be stepping into that role for reasons that we don't need to go into here. And I'm not 100% sure about that, but stand by. There may be some news about that. Finally, you recognize this city? It's another Sky Needle.
Indeed.
That is?
Seattle.
No.
No.
That's why you got to ask these days, because so many cities have this. That's the CN Tower, or at least that's what it used to be called.
Oh, in Sydney.
Canadian National Tower in
Oh.
Toronto.
I don't know that.
And it's a cool city, and this is a view from more or less from Toronto Island, looking back from the Royal Canadian Yacht Club back into the city, looking north. And what kind of boat that is? SUI 8. That may be the match race 40s, Swedish match 40s, but it's an older photo, obviously. The point of this is that Royal Canadian Yacht Club is advertising for a racing director, and there is no finer town in North America, if not the world, especially if you like winter. But it's a great town. The town is economically and otherwise on fire. This is a very cool club. Remember, I'll back up the slide. In 2020, they will have the Canada's Cup. We've had Jamie Keating, is that his name? Was the Commodore, or maybe just going out as Commodore. and Alan McGarry, who is the chair of the Canada's Cup, the two of them maybe as the co-chairs for next year, and they're using New York Yacht Club's developed the Melgus IC37s, and this club goes from strength to strength, and they are looking for a racing director, and if I were younger, and especially if I were Canadian, but I don't think it's a requirement that you be Canadian, I would be thinking seriously about going up there as a Blake Middleton type person. Blake, who was on the show not too long ago and runs racing up in Minneapolis, St. Paul, in that area. But a person like that, this would be a terrific job. You can apply, or you can read more about it at rcyc.ca/about/careers. You got one more click in there, but it became too long. RCYC. Finally, I teased you. One more video, and this is a very brief video. Do you know what that building is, Julia? That is the new National Stadium in Tokyo that's being built for the Olympics.
Oh, if you say it looks like, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, good.
And there's all sorts of problems. They're having all sorts of problems with it. But apparently it's going to be done in time. And I just put that up there because it's it's Tokyo and the Olympics. The sailing Olympics, of course, will be in Enoshima. But the main Olympic Committee, the Tokyo Olympic Committee, is issuing videos, 1-minute videos about each of the sports. And I thought we should look at the video they're doing for our sport.
One sport. Sailing. Yo. Well, next, yoisho! Yay!
No.
Tokyo 2020.
Now, what'd you think of that?
It attracts attention.
Well, I think it was as good a description, a 1-minute description. Pull your mic up just a little closer if you would, please. A good as 1-minute description of anything I've seen in the sport for sailors and non-sailors. Forget that it was kind of kiddie-oriented, but why don't we produce the same thing with some, maybe the verbiage?
Yeah.
You don't agree?
No, I do, I think.
We've 2 hours and 15 minutes, and you want to have some lunch. I don't blame you. So do I. We just want to say thanks to everybody here. Tell us how you think of that video. I think that was terrific, and it's something we ought to look at doing.
It is only 1 minute, and it does a great job for 1 minute.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to hear. That was more like it, Julie. Let's looking back here through a few of these comments. Tom, why you don't ask Guy Noel or Simon James about the King's Cup? We will. I have Ali Dinas, who's a contributor here to the site. She's sailing down there. She volunteered to get up early on her Thursday, which is a lay day. And I've been covering on the website. I've been covering the King's Cup in Phuket in Thailand for some time. It attracts a lot of boats. It's a well-run event. So we're going to get her on, and we'll see what we can do. Seek out Vladimir Kulinichenk, out there sailing. He is from Davis Island Yacht Club. So if Ali is still watching, maybe she knows Vladimir Kulinichenk. Mark Curtis is saying SSL is getting it right. Couldn't agree more, Mark, as you know. Stingray, any AC news since Friday? Well, we've given you that news, I think. We've just done that. Also, Bill Wingrove is saying, speaking of getting the language the same, horses on the water instead of whitecaps, we say We say whitecaps. Kiwis say sheep. In the paddock, they're sheep or sheep tails or horses or horse tails. Yeah, we need to stand. Not that everything has to be the same in uniform.
I think it's nice to have those differences.
But it's confusing, Julia. If you're talking to non-sailors and somebody's saying kicking strap and somebody else saying vang and somebody saying offset mark, I mean, excuse me. You don't agree?
Well, yes, in strictly sailing terms, but describing the water is less.
Well, okay, fair enough. But
I think it's charming to have sheep.
Melanie Spooner. I wonder if that Melanie, if that the Melanie Spooner I know. Hi, Melanie. Welcome to you. If we know each other. Tom, the way Todd Harris and Ken Reed commented, this is Daniel Grun, on AC Live Line in 2013 was really good. Even my non-sailing friends could understand it. We really have to educate people about our sport. Yes, we do. Yes, indeed, we do. Lloyd Gilmore, hi to you, Lloyd. Daniel Grun, Frank Camasu, Volvo Ocean Race winner in 2011-12. Charles Caudrelier, Volvo Ocean Race winner 2017 and 18. Enough said, yeah, and those guys are doing very well. Steve Gruber, dude, sheep in the field or nothing. Sheep in the field.
Yeah.
Clark's is saying sheep in the paddock, and that's from a Michigander where we just say whitecaps. And Taylor, Daniel Grun, Tom, they said that they officially announced Portsmouth by the mid-December in their press release. Well, they said they would officially announce something sometime when they could do it in concert with the host city. I hear they don't even have an agreement yet with Portsmouth. And one wonders if some of the teams aren't trying to talk Portsmouth out of agreeing to it. We'll see. Sherry Smith, Stingray, since the ACWS events carry no points towards anything, should we still expect to see good and honest racing? I think, any of these former World Series events, everyone asks that question. I would do the morning show for 100 people and be out with the VIPs on the water. You know what? The competitive juices kick in. People want to check in. They're not going to give up the last 5%, maybe the last 10% of their performance, but they'll check in. It'll be interesting. You'll see all four boats in the same plot of water. And God forbid there's a collision or there's any problems, because we don't need that. We need to see some good boats going fast and building some excitement for an event which, frankly, has very little promotion so far. And I still think it's going to be a cool event. We'll see. Mark Curtis asking, could there be a lower wind limit or just the usual time limit? No, there have been wind limits in the past, lower and upper, and a time limit. So we'll see. John Sangmeister says nonsense. I don't know what he's saying nonsense to. Ali D. Nas, we said, is watching. Stingray, John Sangmeister, please inform us about the Stars Plus Stripes situation. John is, of course, a member of Long Beach Yacht Club, is arguably the dean of yachting in Long Beach. And John, what he does know, he's very circumspect. He won't tell me a thing, so I doubt you're going to get anything out of him, Stingray. Tom, if Stars and says Daniel Grun again, if Stars and Stripes can't get the money now, they will never get in time. No, if they haven't already built, there's no way they're going to make it. Full stop. Not going to happen. Got to go into overtime allowed. If I contribute, then do my dollars go straight to? Well, that's a good question, Stingray. A lot of people are arguing, including some of the other challengers, that all Stars and Stripes is doing is helping the defender. And the challengers are supposed to bond together and try to climb up the mountain together. One of them gets to the top and then goes against the defender in this King of the Mountain competition we know as the America's Cup. Mark Husted saying, so as teams change, who do you think would change over from the U.S. team when that happens? A good question. I really don't know. Tyler Page, Gordon Smith, North Korea. I don't think so. That shade of red. Well, that's what Gordon was saying. Is that North Korea? I rather doubt it. That short shade of red, Stingray saying, is Viking. I don't think so. I think it's Denmark. Anybody want to bet against me, or somebody has better information? I'm happy to have a little bet. We'll have an online bet for a glass of something somewhere, or a Sailing Illustrated hat, or the hat of your what? Let me know. Jeff Dreschler. Hi, Jeff. Ian Murray rocks. Yes, he does, Stingray says. Alfredo Ricci. We had Alfredo on the show a year ago. We ought to get Alfredo back on here.
Yes.
Past president of the Star Class. Oh, no, he's a judge. He's a senior series judge, umpire, has done America's Cups and so on. Good guy. Daniel Gruen, I love Ian Murray, too. A good and great guy. He's thoughtful. As I said, he's sober. He's funny. Has that great sense of humor. Pete Carrico, Stingray says Toronto. Yeah, Stingray. Let's just hope Waxy, Clark Chapin is saying, remembers to take a 2-turn penalty if they infringe a Part 2 rule away. Okay.
And Steve Groover says, I'm not sure Waxy really cares about the rules. They just care about first to finish.
Yeah. John Craig is Canadian. Yes, John Craig is Canadian. That way we don't have to watch arbitrators arguing about it on TFE Live again. Yeah, we had Stingray is saying that was a famously good segment, though, wasn't it, Julia?
Yeah, it
when
was.
We had Stingray and Dick Anderson, or not Stingray, we had Clark Chapin and Dick Anderson arguing either side of that in a mock protest hearing that our viewers then watched and voted overwhelmingly in favor of, actually against Waxy. And then we said, okay, if you're going to disqualify or penalize Waxy, what would the penalty be? Wild Oats 11. Mm-hmm. And they came up with a half-an-hour penalty, and the jury, who we hear now, was watching. Yeah. Not that this influenced their decision. I think it was pretty clear cut.
Yeah.
But then the jury gave them an hour penalty, that is to Wild Oats, which was just enough to put Wild Oats into second place or third place, second place.
Second. Yeah.
Steve Groover, I'm not sure Waxy really cares about the rules. They just care about first to finish. This opinion is based on their response to the protest after the finish last year. They were protested, remember, last year as well, which they won, which was dismissed. Clark Chapin, I never ascribe motives to the protest actions by a competitor. Julia, Stingray saying, is wearing Viking red, maybe. Well, I think it's more maroon, isn't it?
Or
Viking red.
And that's not
red. It's
red.
even purple, isn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe I
Magenta.
Magenta. I got to tune your camera up. Maybe I've got to. Great short. Gordon Smith's agreeing. He's saying great short plug from the Japanese Olympics. Stingray saying very skexy. Skexy. Is that a Japanese artist? Who is skexy? Or did he mean sketchy? Tom is looking nervous. I don't know what he thinks I'm nervous about. Great video, and we'll hopefully see more of various kinds. Maybe some NASCAR type, too. Okay, Gordon Smith agreed they do short. Well, Clark, nah, you could do better. Pricey, David Price, I hope that's the last comment. We'll give it to David. We hope that your knees are recovering. Speedy recovery both to you and to Leonard Takahashi. I'm going to try to get an interview with Leonard before Friday, in addition to the one we're going to do with Ali D. Nas from Phuket. Okay, that's it. Thank you, everybody, for the very nice comments, questions. Remember to, Julia, you like to say?
Yes. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe.
Yeah, especially, the thumbs up helps a lot.
Does.
And the sharing, if you just share this to your page, helps us a lot. We appreciate all the videos and photos and give credit to those folks. And we hope to see you back here on Friday. Same time, same channel, and we'll go at it again. Show number, 244. In the meantime, sail fast, sail safe, have fun. Ciao. Bye.